Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Littleton Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, February 25th, 2019. I'll read the proposed agenda. 6:30, we will organize, Pledge of Allegiance, read mail. 6:35, Conservation Commission for a couple updates relative to Cloverdale parking lot and perhaps something on new regs too.
No, that's,
Not even, you teased us, you're not even gonna tell us now? No, all right, okay. 6:40, department updates, fire department, DPW. 6:50, public input, members updates. 7 o'clock, joint meeting with the finance committee and school committee, ongoing operating capital budget discussions, fiscal year 2020. 8 o'clock, town building and space needs analysis working group, award the architect contract. That discussion will be led by Selectmen Napoli and DeCoste. 8:15, town administrative search update, and hopefully Selectman Gerbig and Selectman DeCoste again will have something to report for us. 8:25, we will be beginning the process of inserting articles for the May 6th annual and special town meeting warrants. 8:35, updates from our interim town administrator, Anthony Insaldi. Appointment for part-time administrative help and director of finance and budget / town accountant positions. 8:45 or thereabouts minutes. We have a couple in our packet. 8:50, executive session, non-union contract strategy negotiations. We intend to discuss a couple of topics at that time. But first off, Madam Clerk, if you'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Certainly. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, terrific. Anthony, you want to walk us through the mail, please?
my pleasure. So first thing I just want to bring up, today we had a working fire at 20 Shaker Lane. The fire department, there's some pictures from it today. Chief Wazinski and his crew, quickly, what happened was the Meals on Wheels was delivering, and Chief, if I get any part wrong, was delivering a meal. Well, the resident wasn't home, but when the person opened the front door, they got smoke. So the call went into the fire department. They responded very quickly. They found that the mattress was burning in the bedroom. There was nobody at home at the time. Littleton Fire Department did a great job. Obviously, as you can see, they dragged that out there. They extinguished it quickly. And it's important to know today's a day when it can cause a lot of problems for fire services, because if you recall in Boston, that situation when those 2 firefighters died, it was a day like today. It was windy, there was welding, and it just feeds the fire. So they did a great job knocking that down really quickly, and I think it's worth bringing to your attention the great work that the men and women do of the Littleton Fire Department and Police Department.
Terrific, and great thanks as usual for your quick response. Any idea at this point what the cause was?
It appears to be a heating pad in mattresses.
Oh.
But that's still being reviewed right now.
I want to make sure it wasn't something I'm presently doing at home right now.
We hope you're not doing that.
Please stop there.
Okay. But again, thank you. And folks responded, and how quick was the response time? Just to...
We were there in just a couple of minutes.
Right.
It was a relatively quick knockdown.
Yeah.
Pretty much just destroyed the bedroom. Obviously some smoke and heat damage in the main floor of the home, but should be back in there within a few weeks probably.
Terrific. Thank you, Chief. Okay, Anthony?
Okay. Second thing, we're thanking departments for the great work they do. We received an email from the Barry family on the great job that the DPW did during the last storm. We got it on February 21st. And, it's important to know that although we didn't have the snow that we've had in the past, storms that we've had with the little bit of freezing rain creates even more of a problems for our DPW, because they have to go out and they have to salt, and then they pre-treat the roads and they scrape, and then they have to come back in. So these are actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, they actually can be worse than just having a snow.
If you've been baking, you're excused.
I'm excused. Well, I'm baking or I brought cookies, because those are different things.
So, these type of storms are a challenge for our public works, and they've been doing a great job. And this email is just an indication from a resident who recognized that. So kudos to Chris and his gang for the great work they're doing all winter long.
Thank you, Chris, and, yeah, it's been noted that even though maybe this hasn't been a huge accumulation of snow season, it always seems to happen when you guys are off work, right? So it's killing your budget, weekends and nights, right? Yeah. And Monday holidays, right? What a great deal.
You
Thank
come
you.
late all the time.
It is, especially if you drive through other towns, it's amazing how quick it's one thing to have the roads up to stuff, but to have the sidewalks up to stuff a day after a storm, that's pretty good, and kudos, yeah.
And we do appreciate getting letters to letting our staff know when they do a good job, because usually we just hear the opposite a lot more when we do something
Right,
wrong.
right,
So
right.
that was nice for, to be recognized by Public Works.
Let's jump in there, just, there is mention there, I know that we talk about the possibility of adding, at some point in time, adding some funds to Chris's budget to extend sidewalks, and that was the last sentence in Mr. Barry's letter was, I know it's somewhat beyond your control, but we would love to see more sidewalks, so that was important to note as well.
And you're an advocate for that as well,
Absolutely.
even though it makes more work for you.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Well, this grist mill was actually an addition. We never snow blowed this before this year, so
Mm-hmm.
I added that length of sidewalk this year.
Great,
We're willing to take it on if we need to.
terrific, thank you. Anthony?
We received an invitation from Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito. They're having a housing choice announcement this Wednesday at the steps of the grand staircase at the State House. Littleton being a housing choice community, they invited us to attend. From what I understand, I believe he's reintroducing his legislation that kind of paused last year with the housing choice. So he was looking for some support from those communities that are housing choice.
Anybody able to go? I'm not.
No.
Are you planning on going, Anthony?
I'm planning on going.
Is Maren gonna go too?
Myron's gonna try to go too, yeah,
Okay,
if her schedule allows.
all right. And make full use of the FaceTime with especially Secretary Keneally, so he remembers who we are, right?
Yeah.
Try to
yeah.
foster that relationship as much as we can with Secretary Ash leaving.
Yeah, let them know that you're there because they asked.
That's right. Oh, I put the call in, they
Okay.
know, yeah.
Cool. All right.
The next thing, the MMA has legislative breakfasts on the 22nd, 29th, and the 5th. This is basically an opportunity for town administrators and town managers and so forth, and board of selectmen and mayors to have an opportunity to meet with your legislators and talk about issues that are important to municipalities across the Commonwealth. So they do this twice throughout the year, and this is just another time when we can get in there and kind of, advocate for some of our more challenging issues that are facing us. And the last thing, I think it's the last thing, but we received our letter that we are a municipal vulnerability preparedness community. So if you remember, Erin Healy actually led the charge, and this was a grant that, that she put together some workshops, and staff and boards and committees in town sat through to work on our community resiliency building plan. So we finally get the letter from the Commonwealth that says congratulations, and what that does is it allows us to go after some action grants. So that was the step that we needed in order to pursue more grants down the road.
Okay, great.
And that leads us to number 2.
Actually, one thing to note with the climate change issue, I read something just today that DeLeo is trying to make $1 billion available for communities to deal with climate change preparedness, energy infrastructure, things like that. So it may be something that we want to look at more closely now that there's some, potentially some significant sums of money. And the article I read on the State House News Service was that $1 billion was going to be separate and apart from other preparedness type programs, not just another way to take a bite of the same apple, so. I
Yeah.
think this will help us.
Maybe our energy generating components and smart fuel project would qualify for some.
Was, especially where it could be located and powering some key infrastructure to help us get out of a mess.
I think what you might see is some of those seacoast communities that really deal with the ocean effects of storms, and I believe, speaking to Leo's from Winthrop.
Winthrop,
Which is, last time I checked, is pretty much surrounded by water, so I think a lot of funding is gonna go to those seacoast communities, but not to say that there isn't something there for us.
My sense reading it was that's what DeLeo would like to see,
Yeah.
but he knows in order to get the votes, he's gotta
Right,
move some of that money west.
gotta share the
too.
wealth a little bit, yeah, right,
All right, well, we'll monitor that.
we will.
Okay. Conservation Commission, a little update on Cloverdale. We last discussed it, I guess we walked it in the fall, right? It
Last spring.
was it spring?
Yeah, last spring,
Last
yeah,
last
like May or something, I think.
Wow,
Yeah, it was a while, it was.
okay. It was a while ago,
It
I
was a
remember
while
that, but yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Terrific.
No, the commission just asked me, I'm Amy Green,
Yeah.
the conservation coordinator. The commission just asked me to give you a quick update that the parking plan for 6 spaces, probably where you parked for the sidewalk, which I
Right.
couldn't have made. Green International has done this preliminary, which is pretty much what everybody would expect. You pull in where you've been pulling in and have 6 spaces. It would be gravel, or Chris Stoddard might be able to come up with some grindings to do it. So they're going to proceed getting this, adding the grading and drainage to it, and start the DOT access permit application.
Okay. What's the estimated on completion at this point?
Chris can tell me if I'm misspeaking for him. I think he can probably do it this fall, when he frees up a little bit, but, yeah. If they have, I told him that, if they have grindings that could be used for here, we can stockpile them there. So that backs us up to needing to do a little bit of grading early on, so we have to get the DOT access permit a little earlier, so. Hopefully by, the end of the construction season this year.
Okay, terrific. You're okay with all that, Chris?
Yeah, I've kind of been over helping Amy get this through with Green, so.
Board
We're on the
members?
same
Any comments, questions?
Oh, and I did for the boardwalk is, I brought the nice sunset picture. Or sunset picture. The boardwalk is under construction. It's obviously, no one's working on it now while there's high water and frozen ground conditions.
How far along did you get on that?
That's maybe 100 feet.
Not very far.
It's not very far. But, we're getting there.
Were there any?
Hopefully that'll be done next construction, by the end of the construction season too.
One of the concerns that I had raised previously was relative to curb cuts, Mass DOT approvals and authorizations, and making sure that we're abiding by everything that they've put forth. Has Green looked into that? Has Chris looked into that? Where are we at with those kinds of
Yeah,
concerns?
Green is pulling that together, the actual application together. I spoke with, I'm not gonna remember the name of the guy in District 3 offhand, probably last May or June about it, just to kind of get a heads up, make sure we really had to do an access permit, because there kind of was a curb cut there. Excuse me, he said he did want to see something. So, and Green doesn't think that there'll be an issue, it's just, DOT's timeframes are long timeframes, so.
The other concern that I had at the time was just sightlines.
There's, you can see forever on that portion of it.
Traffic's coming pretty quickly.
Traffic is coming very quick, but it is pretty open in there. And there's, where this entrance, excuse me, is, there's no shrubs or trees. There's a little bit of the guardrail and a couple telephone poles. But it's where a lot of people actually pull off there now, if they're trying to make a call or something, because there's kind of a big pull out. right
Shoulder,
now.
on the shoulder.
On the shoulder, yeah.
That's all I have for now. I reserve the right to
Yes.
regain the floor.
Your commission's working on some new regs, which you're not gonna tell us about until later?
Not new regs, we're looking at some revisions.
revisions, okay.
Town council's been through them, we just need to get time on our agenda to finish them off, to bring them down. Mostly trying to clarify what public interest is for waivers, and a little more clear on stormwater for single-family homes and what's needed, so.
All right. Well, we appreciate you visiting us.
Mr. Chairman, just while Amy's still here, there's, we have more people than we typically have. I just suggest that we ask if there's any input from
okay.
any residents relative to the parking.
Good enough. Do we have any interested residents while the Conservation Commission officer, Amy Green, is with us relative to the parking at, okay, yes?
Brody Adama, 5 Old Farm Road, in a butter. And one of the concerns that we have is it just doesn't really make a lot of sense that we're going forward with this parking lot when the curb cut has not even been approved yet. And the other thing just want to bring to the board's attention is that the commission has not followed the directive. Just reading briefly from the minutes from last June 11th, agenda item 5A. Paul indicated his approval as well and asked the CONSCOM to honor the financial aspects of the project before construction takes place, have hearings at CONSCOM meetings for public awareness and input. As an abutter, we have not received any notice of any hearings. As far as we know, there's been no hearings at this point. We haven't been informed and hasn't been brought to the public's attention as far as any input for this particular project.
Well, that's
So,
important
very
information, and how do you answer that?
Yeah, so we did, I think, if I remember correctly, the last time the commission talked about this, it was at a posted meeting. It was not a hearing, so voters were not notified, and I believe, I wasn't there, but I believe one of you was there, if I remember. And so that's how we're proceeding. Obviously, we need to get the plans and the design done before we can apply for the access permit, so it's a little bit of a iterative process.
Well, is there any reason before the design is done that you couldn't have a public hearing and notify abutters?
And post it in the newspaper, or just notify butters? Usually, when we have an actual permit application, which this will not need because it's outside the buffer zone from the Concom, that's what.
Well, since we're not satisfying a legal requirement as much as we are just a stated commitment, then, you know, I don't know that it needs to be advertised in the paper as much as notifying the abutters.
Yes, I think when we think that Green's gonna be able to come back with an update on the plan, so you get an idea of drainage and that this is gonna work, and the DOTs, we can definitely notify the abutters.
Yeah, when the engineers are present, have them at a meeting, I mean, that's a, you know,
Oh, yeah,
fairly
and I
reasonable thing
think,
to ask.
and we would notify butters to all the parcels that make up Cloverdale, not just this one parcel,
Yeah.
which is a very limited parcel.
Okay, Mr. Adler?
Just bringing back to the attention that obviously the picture of construction that's already begun, which was in contradiction to the board's direction at last June meeting.
We haven't started any construction out there.
We've been out there.
There's a picture,
construction
there's a
too.
picture right there.
That's the boardwalk.
Parking.
That is,
Right, and the
that's,
boardwalk. And
that's construction.
that was part of the June meeting also, that we would be informed on that.
My understanding was that the construction was going to go construction of the boardwalk was going to go forward on a parallel track to the parking area.
Permit for the parking.
Yeah, right, those were going to move on separate courses. Just because of DOT's timeline and whatnot.
And that was my understanding as well, that they're pretty much separate projects.
Okay, well, let me, again, ask two questions. One back to you is what a timeframe might be for a hearing where, at least at a meeting when you plan on having your engineers present with enough notice that the abutters, all the abutters could be notified so that they have an opportunity to have a conversation with, you know, through you to the engineer, number one. And then number two, Chris, do you have a better idea of what the process is for the District 3 regarding the curb cut issue?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, I think it makes sense to have, if you want to go through, call it a public hearing, get the public's input before they finalize the plans to submit to Mass DOT. This is fairly straightforward. Mass DOT should be able to turn this around pretty quickly. It won't, the construction of this won't happen until I'm done with road construction this year. So realistically, we wouldn't even start this until October at the earliest, if not later. So there's more than enough time to get all the permits in place. We wouldn't start construction before we had a Mass DOT permit. But there's substantial enough time that all of that will be in place before we start.
Okay, so a curb cut permit is a requirement before you do your work?
Yeah, we wouldn't do this without a curb cut.
All right, and in the shorter term, an opportunity, just as a courtesy.
Yeah,
that we make
absolutely. I
commitment to.
think once Green makes their next set of plans for the parking lot, then we can, you know, notify all the abutters and have a specific meeting for that.
Okay.
I mean, the boardwalk is going ahead, there's nothing to
That was gonna happen regardless.
Yeah, the grant money has gone out, the grant money has come back in.
In fact, the objective was to finish the boardwalk last fall, is that right?
No,
Make
it's,
substantial
the
progress
grant
on-
goes through December
Okay.
2019. We're gonna have to reevaluate because we got a late start on getting it going, so.
I think that's a little bit cart before the horse. I don't recall the specifics of the meeting, but having parking for something that.
People do
It's
park
gonna
there
cut
now.
costs.
It's
Understood.
certainly not the
It's
best
not-
situation,
right,
but
it's not endorsed,
it's on grass and it's on a bit of a slope before you get up to,
yeah. Like you said, where we parked when we went out there to do the sidewalk.
yeah.
Well, it's as random, I guess, as the various conservation lands in town. Some have designated parking areas, some don't, you know, and some are more formally defined and some aren't. In this case, we intend to have it
This
formally
will probably be
defined.
somewhat similar to the one on Harvard Road for Oak Hill, just before you get to Harvard, if you're
Yeah.
familiar with that one, especially in terms of surface type and
Okay,
all that, so.
all right. Well, I think the next opportunity to have, sure.
Just one last
Yep.
thing, just what would happen if the curb cut is not approved?
We wouldn't go forward with the parking, I guess, unless there's a
Yeah.
argument for appealing on it.
So I guess, what would be interested as far as the public hearing as to the full disclosure of what has been spent on this project so far, what is the actual plan and the timing of the project, and what is the projected total cost of this project? So as a town, there could be a good decision, fiscal responsibility. Is this the best place to be putting this much money into this particular project when there's other things going on that a larger part of the population could benefit from?
Okay, well, I
And
know.
that's all part of
yeah.
what Green is gonna be doing as a cost estimate.
And again, some of this is funded by grant money, actually, all of it's been funded.
Not by grant money, but by Concom monies.
Okay, in any event, those proper questions for the Conservation Commission, I'd get them into writing into them in advance of the meeting when they have the hearing. Hopefully get your answers before the meeting, if not at the meeting,
And the meeting might go more than one night anyway.
because you're
so-
managing that project. We
Yes.
discussed this before.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so hopefully the next meaningful conversation you'll have is at the Conservation Commission meeting sometime, what, next month or two?
Probably sometime next month,
Okay,
I would imagine. And we'll certainly let you know before we file the curb cut
please do.
as well. It was passed.
Oh, that, yeah, well, Chris will be
Just so
very
you-
much involved in that
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Amy.
All right. Department updates. Chief Wodzinski. First up with the procurement issue, 2007 Smeal pumper, engine for refurbishment. Is there any setup here, Anthony, we need to be aware of?
No, so this was money that was allocated to the spring 2017 town meeting for the refurbishment of engine 4. The chief, we went out to bid. He got 2 bids back. One had to be disqualified because they didn't follow and submit all the necessary paperwork that they're supposed to. So they're leaving us with 1 bid, which was still actually under budget considering what we allocated back in 2017. So with that, the chief can get into any more specifics that we have with it.
Yep, like Anthony said, we
We
received,
did get your quote documents too, so.
you have them? Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. So we received 2 of them. Tonight, we're looking for approval to award $115,370.48 to New England Fire Equipment for the refurbishment of engine 4. And that will go through, basically rebuild the engine, rebuild the pump, take care of some corrosion issues, electrical work on it, redoing all the lighting, paint job.
You know what I lost track of? Did you have an idea going into it, what you thought it was gonna cost?
Roughly 125.
Okay.
How long will be out of service?
Probably about 6 months.
Does that affect your force at all?
It just doesn't leave us a backup. Right now, we take engine 1 and 4, we rotate them around every month so that they're constantly used. Yep, and we'll just, we'll be short with that, and we'll run with the 2 engines and the ladder.
You don't often run both of those out on an incident anyway, huh?
All depends. A day like today, they've been going from call to call. A few minutes ago, the station was empty, so. And, you know, it depends on the day and the incidents going on. We don't have it, we can get manpower to the scene and call mutual aid.
Chief, engine 2 is the newest engine?
Correct. Yep.
And that's kind of that rolls, like the ambulance rolls, engine 2 is typically with it because it's the full service.
Typically, a lot of times the pickup truck will just roll with the ambulance. You know, don't necessarily need to bring the engine to everything.
Yeah.
But if it's, you know, crashes or structural things, the engine rolls.
It's somewhat germane to what you're asking for, and I mean, it's, 115 is a lot less than if you were coming to replace engine 4. We well aware of that.
500, right?
Right. So, well, you look at engine 2, right? So you kind of get an idea from that. If we had a list of assets, I know for me it would help. I think we've mentioned this in the past, and I think it would be important for us, and Chris, you can listen as well, and the police department. And I think if we had a list of assets, it would help us, and I'm sure it would help the residents to better understand, okay, what's engine 4? Which one is that? And you just mentioned, we rotate between engine 1 and engine 4. That helps us to paint that picture. But, I mean, even for me, an inventory with a picture and a little blurb next
We
to it.
can post it on the website, answer
I
a
just
lot of
think
questions.
I think it
People
it
will ask
does
you,
eliminate.
how
a
many
lot of
trucks do we
questions.
have? What do they do? You know, all the
Yeah.
obvious questions.
Yeah, I think it'll help us to be able to better justify and certainly in turn help you and.
Yeah, we can get that posted on the
Chris.
website and.
I mean, maybe I'm off
Right.
base, but I think
No,
that would
I
be something
agree.
that would benefit the residents because they'll know what their dollars are being spent on.
Yeah, no problem.
Maybe you could animate it, the fire truck could tell you what it does.
At
We got some
one,
kids at the high school that might be able to volunteer their time to do that.
at one point when we did have the website, we actually had the picture of every truck and you could click on all the compartments.
It's
were open,
interactive, yeah.
And you could show everything. So since we've done that changeover, you know, there's no reason why we can't do that again.
Yeah, the more information we can share, I think is the better. It
Absolutely.
educates
Next time we
everybody.
do a touch a truck day, it can be virtual, right?
Right.
No, but I'm with you, I agree. And, because somewhere buried in our details are what you own, but it's not easily accessible. It never comes up at the right time. You find it flipping through, you know, a volume somewhere. And it would be useful to see where this fits in, and that's true of all the departments. You're right, Chuck, I agree with you. So, lead by example and be the first. How's
All right,
that?
sounds good. I'll get it on the website.
Challenge is on, Chris.
Any further comments, questions for the chief on this issue regarding engine 4? Is it 4?
You can't get like Fuzzy Car or Mark Shapiro or someone to do the fix?
Yeah, you can try.
The tech?
Might not get 10 years out of it.
Fine.
That's the expected extension of the lifetime on this?
Correct.
10 years.
Roughly, yes. Yeah, and fire engines last about 20 years, so we try to hit that 10-year point and then do a refurb on it. And just, you know, hopefully run it a little bit less and keep it in good working condition.
Procedural question, can I ask?
Sure.
With the fire today, I noticed going through the common, the Acton truck was going through. Did that Acton truck go to our station as a backup? Is that what it's?
They did, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually had Westford and Boxborough were coming to the scene. The guys did a great knockdown on it. We were able to get it ventilated rather quickly and some of the items removed. So we were able to cancel some of that mutual aid and we just kept Acton going to cover the station.
That's great.
From the viewpoint from my office, because I get to watch it, it seemed like engines were going in different directions. I thought you had the wrong road, because someone down Golson Street and someone down Great Road, and they go, oh, they're so confused, I don't even know where they're going.
They gave him a chair by the window. And
Exactly.
Rotate them in the sunlight.
With a lollipop.
I keep track of who's out.
Good points. If there aren't any further questions, we do have a recommended motion.
Certainly. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Article 8, Section 2C of the May 1st, 2017 Annual Town Meeting to approve and award a contract in the amount of $115,370.48 to New England Fire Equipment and Apparatus Corporation from New Haven, Connecticut, for the refurbishment of Engine 4, a 2007 Smeel pumper.
Second.
The motion's made by Selectman Napoli, seconded by Selectman DeCoste. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Great, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Just, so at town meeting, we approved $125,000, right?
Correct.
That was the statement made. So just so, it's just an education point here. So, Bonnie, maybe you can help us out with this question. So we approved $125,000 at town meeting. Scott put it out to bid. We're just awarded a contract for $115,000 plus minus. Just kind of educate us on what happens to that extra $10,000 that we allocated at town meeting, if you would.
So if there are any change orders throughout the refurb, if something gets discovered that wasn't discoverable at the onset, they could use that additional funding if approved by Anthony. And if not, if there are no changes and the account's closed, we close it back to the fund balance and it goes to free cash.
So that goes to undesignated funds or free cash is what we term it. Just so that free cash eventually builds up and it's not like a magic wand that we wave at it and fill it up, just so people have an understanding of where that money comes from.
It's very uncommon in a refurb like this that they don't come up with something.
Oh, they'll come up
Once
with
you-
something.
Yeah.
Right.
Once you take the-
Unfortunately, as they take these things, take the pump out, take the engine out, they find different things that they can't see at face value.
Right,
And to have that buffer in there is a good thing.
right.
It's like a contingency.
Yeah.
I just saw an opportunity
Exactly.
to, learning moment. Thank you, Bonnie. Thanks, Chief.
Thanks.
All right, Chris, I guess you're the designated spokesperson on this next topic, the Veterans Corner project update. Cindy, you want to say that?
I guess it could be a combined effort. between
Yes, it
Cindy
will
and
be.
myself.
Okay, Cindy and
Cindy's
Chris.
there, I think.
Okay, sure.
knows
So
what-
I was, we're at the point now with the Veterans Corner where I think everybody knows that we received the matching grant approval, which is great news. The funding's going really well. So we're getting ready now to, we'd like to solicit bids for, there's 2 monuments that we need to add, larger stones, and then 1 smaller monument. So I've been working with Chris on that. He's been great help, a great help with me on this project. So we were supposed to put together something more specific for tonight, but I kind of didn't get to it. So I do have the name of 3 companies I wanted to send out a request to, just to see, have them come in and submit a bid for those stones, and the engraving. And we really want to have the project done by November, we'd like to, of this year,
Veterans Day.
so, Veterans Day, yeah.
Great.
So I'd like to get started on this sooner rather than later and set that expectation with whoever we do retain, that is the deadline we're
You're
looking
gonna be
at.
following up with those 3 vendors?
Yeah, I have the scope of work.
And just for clarification, it wouldn't require bids, it would require quotations
Yeah.
because of the
Right.
dollar threshold.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
don't
as
use the right
simple as
terminology, right.
Chris calling up the places and say, this is what we want, can you send us a quote? And the fact that he's even asking for 3, if he only gets 1 out of the 3 satisfies Mass General Law, Chapter 30B. So if we only get 1 back, that's fine.
And you're just gonna ask them to quote it based on that timeline?
Yeah, I actually have a Word document, scope of work right now that I'll send them. That way, if somebody ever questions it, I have a record that we emailed them.
Apples for apples. yeah.
Is the site work significant beyond the changing of the stones?
Glad you asked that.
There's a little bit of, well, actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have volunteers, right? A company that's doing that?
Right, Paul Banjoni Landscaping.
Yeah, but basically it's pulling out some of the gardening around it and then adding in additional pavers. I'm guessing kind of leveling off the existing pavers that are
Right.
there.
Footing under the new monuments. that kind of-
Right.
Footings under the, that'll be us. We'll end up pouring new footings under the monuments and under the benches, because we're gonna set the benches off of the brick patio.
Is there, if I may, is there any plan to, right now, you've paths that basically were paved because that's the way people walked across. So they were paved, so it wouldn't just look like worn out grass. So is there any thought to realign paths to match up with handicap accessibility or?
Yeah, so actually what we plan to do is connect the dots from Great Road all the way to the common, to the Veterans Memorial. What that'll do is, we can't put handicap ramps on King Street and Stevens because they'll be
handicap ramps to nowhere, and there's parking stalls. So what we're gonna do is, we already have handicap ramps at the corners
Or Stevens.
of Stevens and a corner of Great and King. So we're just gonna create a 5-foot wide path, ADA compliant, paved all the way through the park, the whole way to it, so that way somebody can access it. So yes, it will then become ADA
So
accessible.
the handicap picnic table that we have out there will actually be able to be
Yeah, I didn't even know we had one,
used
but
by
yes.
a,
Maybe we can relocate it to where you can actually get to it, yeah.
Would it be possible to also somehow tie in via a handicap accessible ramp up through there to the public parking?
We can.
You know,
Problem is,
crossing and-
yeah, we lose 3 spots on both sides of Stevens Street, 3 parking stalls. And that was one of the thoughts, the reason we didn't want to lose almost, let's call it 6 parking spots.
Okay.
So that's why we figured this was kind of a happy medium. I mean, there's a sidewalk on the municipal lots side of Stevens, and there's an ADA ramp on both sides there, so it's a roundabout way, but they can get there. And then this way, and with this plan, we don't lose any parking stalls.
and those are a hot commodity.
Premium.
Yep, yeah, no, absolutely, I understand the trade-off.
Joe
Actually,
can
just
Joe
glad
can
you
see them
thought
from
of it.
his chair.
I see they get used all the time.
If the public wants to view these, Cindy, this is available, is it on the town website? I know it's probably on,
We can put it on there.
Yeah,
Okay.
we should get it on the town website.
and you also, I was giving you a chance to plug the veteran pays if people want to help pay for it.
Right, right, so we do have a Facebook page, the Edgar P. Romley Veterans Corner Update, and we do have a website, and I can't remember the name of the website off the top of my head. I always forget the name of
Gary's
the
gonna look it
website.
up for you.
All right, good, thanks. And we are selling the patriotic banners, and that's another thing that actually we need to get on the agenda with the board, is to vote for the approval to hang those banners. It's a fundraiser for the Veterans Corner. We're planning to line
Lights, poles.
Oh,
on the light poles, King Street and Great Road.
I guess that's their light department call. You gotta go talk to those folks.
Oh, I've already talked to them. They're
Okay.
fully on board.
Then I
Very,
guess,
yep. So we're selling the banners. We want to hang them from May 1st through November 30th, similar to what we did for the 300th, the anniversary. So it should be great to get those up and hung. I know a lot of the veterans are excited about it. What's the website on there, Chuck?
Friends of Littleton Veterans,
Thank you. So you can go to
.org, right?
com.
.com, yeah, friendsoflittletonveterans.com.
Yes.
Has more information, and there is also a Facebook page.
Okay, great. Okay, anything further?
That's it.
You're gonna have a busy fall, huh?
We're gonna have it busy all year.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Public input. If there are any topics that are not on our agenda and otherwise accounted for, and you're here and you want to talk to us about them, here's your chance. Up, yes?
Come up for,
Well, you don't have to, just identify yourself.
so I'm Cindy Guidi, 5 Richard Way in Littleton. I think many of you are probably aware that there is a group of citizens that would like to see a ban on the retail marijuana shops in Littleton. So to that effect, I'm working on a petition to get it to vote at the next town meeting. And I'm here to ask for some help from our town council to make sure that the wording is accurate and fits within the legal requirements.
I think we already promised that much at the previous meeting, at least. The standard for folks doing initiative petitions is, we're not going to offer the services to help you write it, but they will review it.
Okay, and how do I go about getting that assistance?
Submit it through the town administrator's office.
When you have your
We
final-
spoke to Megan Rank about this at the last meeting.
Yeah, when you have your final version, we'll submit it to town council. If there's any issues, we'll let you know.
Okay, so I'll follow up with
Follow up with
you.
me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just to remind, even if they pass a town meeting, that in itself will not create the ban on marijuana.
Right. I was not gonna get into the details because I know we'll be rescheduling this subject matter again when we have planning board
Yeah,
representation, the
okay.
committee back before us, which is what we promised your colleagues before. There will be another scheduled agenda item for that undoubtedly in the next month or so. Yeah, March, April sometime, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, good. Board member updates, Selectman DeCoste?
On Thursday, the 28th, this Thursday, from 11 to 1, there's an MMA meeting that is discussing recycling. I'm unable to make it, but if anybody is available to make it, it's at the MMA headquarters, 1 Winthrop Square in Boston. It's something that Chris can speak to this. It's a very real problem and challenge for all municipalities, but we're getting to the point where we used to make money on our recycling, now we're paying to have our recycling hauled, and our fees are going up. What we're paying to get rid of our trash and our recycling is going up. So if anybody is able to go, whether it's someone from the town side or from Board of Selectmen, I think it'd be well worth attending. It's get some kind of experts in the field, some communities that have had some success, and I think it'd be a good opportunity
That's
for us to
Thursday,
learn some
right?
stuff.
Thursday?
This Thursday, 11 to 1 at 1 Winthrop Square in Boston. The other thing I wanted to say is a couple of weeks ago, Neshoba Valley Technical High School, Regional Technical High School, offers, once a year, they offer an opportunity for all the legislative bodies that are serviced by the school to come in, have breakfast, which is prepared by the tech, by the culinary arts program. Dr. Pigeon and the school committee, the chairman of the Neshoba Valley Tech School Committee is actually Charlie Ellis, former school committee chairman from the town of Littleton for our school committee. And that group works tirelessly. They're doing a great job. We have actually a budget packet in front of us right now. I just wanted to do a shout out. They really did a really nice job of hosting us. The kids did a great job of feeding us and welcoming us. Some of the kids got up and spoke about their experiences from going to the tech. One of the things that I want to kind of put before, since the school committee's here, the superintendent and the chairman of the school committee are here, and other members of the school committee are here, I would love to see what some of the other communities are doing from Littleton, where all 8th graders actually go and attend kind of an open house. I know that we bring them in, and kids can go there if they want to go there, but Westford, and now I believe Pepperell just committed to have all 8th graders go through when, in another community I can't remember which, I think Townsend has done this in the past, and their registration from those communities went up by 13 in one community, I think 11 in the other community. So I think it's the perception among tech schools when I was in school was that's where a certain type of kid went that wouldn't fit in at the high school, and the tech was just kind of a place for some other kids to go. This resource that we have available to us is a fantastic option for kids. Some of the kids that got up and spoke are going to tremendous schools. They've placed kids at MIT, they've placed kids at Columbia. So going to the tech does not mean that you're not going to be able to go to college or follow a typical career path out of high school and into college. But college is not necessarily for everybody, and I'll speak to myself. My son Tucker is at the high school. He's going to do a post-grad, 2 years of post-grad at the tech, which I'm not even sure if residents know that that's available to
My
their
nephew's
students.
doing the same thing.
Yeah, so there's options available to us. We pay into it, so we should let everybody know the resources available. So I'd love to meet with you guys to see if there's an opportunity for us to do
We've had
that.
discussions about the way that we introduce the opportunity to our middle school students. Our concern about pulling all of the 8th graders on a single day over there is the impact on delivery of curriculum, which we have a lot of pressures. So that they go on a day, so the ones that want to go together.
Right.
So it's very similar to the experience that the other districts are creating for their student body. And we can have another discussion about how we think we want to do it. And we've definitely had updates the last couple of years from the tech about the breadth of their programs and the scope that you just talked about, where, students that think they want to matriculate through a 4-year degree program in college absolutely should not think that they're constrained in any way whatsoever.
Right.
beyond the tech, as a matter of fact, I would argue that going to the tech is almost more difficult because you do the tech education and you still take the same number of math classes, the same number of English classes, and the other requirements that we have in our curriculum without the tech requirements that we don't have. So we've been able to educate, and then the post-grad stuff we've also talked about at school committee. So we're always looking for opportunities to, reevaluate the best way to deliver that information to the community. And we have evaluated the opportunity of bringing all of them over there at one time. It's just, like I said, it's just striking that balance.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that. But maybe we can reach out to those other communities, and I'm happy to do some of that legwork, and find out how they were able
Absolutely,
to
just
do just that, strike that balance.
let's meet about that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Other member updates? You have more?
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Knapp?
Just to double on what Chuck said too, what I was impressed with was the diversity of programs they offered. We used to have the idea they only offered certain things, and they have all kinds of things that young people can get into. One thing I do want to mention, our own police department offers firearm safety program, and they've been running it like once every month, 2 months. I was able to take advantage of that. It's free to residents of town. It goes all through firearm safety. Sergeant Doug Landry runs it. It's just not a couple-hour program. I started at 5 and I got out of there at 20 minutes past 10 last night. So the amount of topics that are covered is tremendous. If people are interested in that type of thing, it also allows you to get your license to carry if that's what you're doing it for. But a lot of people just go to learn about how to handle a firearm and to go into that type of process. People would have been amused with me trying to figure out how to put bullets in magazine, and if I was trying to stop a robbery, the people would have been in Bedford by the time I got the magazine.
But there was nobody to watch them go through the comic.
But it was a great program. It's offered for free. I think there were 15 people who took advantage of it. I did put it on Facebook, and right away, within a couple of minutes, I had 2 people say, let us know when the next one's coming up. So there is interest there. And it's, once again, if you went to a different program in a different town, you're talking about $100, $150, or $200 to take that program, and it's now being offered free by our police department, and Sergeant Landry, once again, does a tremendous job. And I want to point out, I did take my ethics test, and I know the town clerks here, I was the first one, right?
More importantly, did you pass?
I just said I took it, I didn't say anything about the results.
Mr. Chairman, just because Joe's talking about the police department, they're also putting on a Citizens Academy.
Yes, I participated in one of those years ago.
Yeah.
That was terrific, yeah.
So kind of keep your eyes out, folks, if you're interested in
Get a
learning
chance to
about what
sign
the
up.
police department does and becoming a citizen on patrol, I guess. It's kind of a nice outreach that the department's doing. I don't have the details in front of me, but just Joe kind of reminded me of that. It is running on LCTV, so if you are interested, you can kind of catch the loop after you sign off of Board of Selectmen meeting.
Anything further? Selectman Gerby?
I want to mention both to the Board of Selectmen and the public, one of the things that we committed to do with respect to the sewer when we passed that article almost 6 months ago now, for the design was to reevaluate, take another look at the siting options for the quirk itself. A couple weeks ago, our engineering consultants finalized a memo last Friday. The subcommittee responsible for this met and essentially accepted our engineer's memo. So now the next step is to take this information to the public, get public input, and actually just a couple minutes ago, I emailed it to all of you guys. And this memo goes through the screening criteria that starts with all the properties in town, based on some very basic criteria, brings it down to 66 properties that meet, they need to be a certain size, they can't be residential, so on. And then brings it down to 12 properties based on a coarser screening, and then quantitatively evaluates 12 properties as far as how effective they could be at meeting our needs if we were to build the quirk on those locations, including maps and including the scoring that goes with it. The process from here is that we intend to meet with interested residents, a public information session. It could be at a Board of Selectmen meeting, it could be standalone, I think that's one of the things we need to talk
Hoping
about.
to do it maybe next Monday.
Yeah, I mean, we were hoping to do it next Monday. I
We're
think
hoping to do it tomorrow,
Well,
but not
yeah.
enough residents were able to make it, so.
that's right. We actually tried to queue it up for tomorrow, but we wanted to make sure that the interested residents were available, so we reached out to them, and it wasn't gonna be a great date.
It's still on the town calendar for tomorrow.
Is it? Okay.
It needs to change.
I think it wasn't until the end of the day today that we had, I think, formally decided to pull it off, so it's not surprising. It's still up. So I've circulated that to you guys, and when we, I think, are definitive on a date, although next Monday seems like it's gonna be the date, we'll let you guys know, and we'll make sure town residents are aware of the date and location. And at that meeting, engineers will be there to talk about the evaluation process. And in particular, it wasn't just a screening of sites, but also looking at what is the relative cost of going to a different site, both positive and negative. Technically, in principle, we could put this anywhere in town, but piping costs would, grow exponentially the farther you put it, so we tried to put estimated costs to some of the more viable parcels involved. I will tell you that the headline, the primary conclusion from our engineers at this point anyway, is that the DPW facility is still the top scoring facility, still the top scoring location.
Okay.
But there's a lot more detail about why and how we arrived at that conclusion, and the quantitative metrics that go into it. So very much need the public and the Board of Selectmen to take a look at it. It's not crazy long, it's 7 or 8 pages of text and maps, so.
Is this on the town website somewhere?
If it's not up yet, it will be.
Recent generation, so probably it's Friday.
Friday.
So we received it from the engineers, and we're hoping to have that meeting with residents and open to any interested citizen next week, but we'll make sure all members of the working group obviously get a copy of it and the invitation, and we should put it up on the website.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Anything else, Chase?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, great. Cindy?
Sure. So the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board is having a housing summit on March 12th. I had mentioned that at a previous meeting. I just wanted to remind everybody it's going to be at 7 o'clock at the fire department. We're putting forward just a presentation to just inform other boards and the public about who we are and what our mission is, what information we've gathered to date, and just some short-term objectives. I'm going to meet with the CPC, with Bartlett, Harvey, and myself are co-chairs of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board. We're gonna meet with the CPC this week just to discuss. We are submitting an application to take some funding from the housing bucket and transfer it over to the trust for initial funding. We want to implement a voucher program as one of our short-term immediate goals for the housing board. The other thing I wanted to just remind the board, or maybe the chairman specifically, is the shade tree. There is some interest in the shade tree committee. I'd like to maybe bring them in at some point and get some new people.
Most important thing is getting some new volunteers.
There's people that are waiting to just.
Have they signed up, filled in an application?
I will follow up on that. Okay. And then the final thing is, a few months ago, I had been doing some segments on LCTV for addiction, the Stop the Stigma, Start a Conversation video segments, and I've had some people come forward and say, are you still doing those? If anybody has any interest in coming forward and sharing their story with the public in an effort to help others, they can definitely reach out to me anytime. That's gonna be an ongoing project in collaboration with LCTV, so if anyone does have interest, please definitely feel free to reach out to me. Be more than happy to sit down with you. That's it.
Thank you. All right. Anything I had, I'll save for a future meeting when everyone else is scarce.
Right.
Because we've got guests with us here
How much
tonight,
are you
sure.
requesting from CPC?
The bucket, the full bucket, I believe. I don't know that exact
The
amount,
housing
Frank.
piece of
It'd be
it,
close to
Yeah.
$500,000, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Welcome, Chairman Fred, it's a good segue. The next topic is FY 2020 operating and capital budget update. The 1 year we can say we're gonna get our FY 2020 budget in focus, right? And our friends from both the Finance Committee and School Committee are here with us. Thank you, Betsy, for laughing. Okay, with that, as we often do, why don't we have a memo from Bonnie, our very soon-to-be departing Director of Finance and Budget, about where we stand right now and the outstanding issues, updates from the last time we met as a group, and why don't we begin with that, Bonnie, and there's a few other topics we'll undoubtedly get into from that discussion.
Perfect. So basically, since the last update, I was able to go and meet with the Board of Assessors and the Building Department and kind of fine tune what new growth looks like. New growth is basically based on whatever is in place as of January 1st. So we've passed that deadline, so they have a better idea of what's in the ground. We were able to recognize a little bit more revenue from that. We had previously estimated just north of 600,000, and we're at 800,000 at this point. It's all residential, really, when you look at it. It's, there's not really a lot of commercial development that has happened over the last 12 months. So that's a good thing and a little bit troubling thing just for the outward years. Again, I just wanted to remind everybody that we like to have a good balance between the commercial and the residential growth. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on going forward. But with that, we've also received the initial commitment for excise tax, which is the largest commitment that we get from the Registry of Motor Vehicles. It's about the same as it was last year, which was a big increase. So I'm happy that it's stabilized. It looks like, we're not losing any vehicles, or the values aren't, depreciating that quickly. So that was encouraging. So with that information in place now, the level staffing budget and the school required services budget has a deficit of $205,873. So that's down from the $500 and almost $50,000 deficit that we had the last time we met. Just again, in preparing that budget, on the town departments, there are no staffing increases, so it's a level staffing from where we are today for fiscal 2020. It does include any contractually obligated increases, steps, or COLAs, and it's about a 5.85% increase over 2019's budget. The school budget is presented with the 1.4, just north of 1.4 million in required services. That represents a 7.09% increase over fiscal 2019 levels. So now the work of the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen has to start to, bring that budget into balance. Under the current way that the bylaws are written, or the town code, the Finance Committee budget is the one that I have to prepare for the town meeting, so I'll be looking for their recommendations on that. So again, like I said, I just highlighted the additional things that we looked at, the building projects and excise, and any new or changing local receipts. I did keep in the memo the requests for additional staffing, just to keep it on the radar, that were made in this budget. They include some hours in the treasurer's office, highway parks laborer, cemetery, some seasonal hours, the police for one full-time school resource officer, and some additional hours for existing staff in the library. Again, they're not incorporated in this budget, but they are sitting in requests. I also still have the $25,000 appropriation for the TRED, or the tax relief to elderly and disabled. Again, that's a new thing. We haven't done that in the past before, but it targets a particularly needy group of individuals that are looking for tax relief. So that is remaining in here. I also have the capital plan. We have not changed anything from the last update, but I know that since that update, I had received a couple of different changes. I know the planning board modified their requests to 141,000 instead of the 165 that we see here. And then in the police department, there's, let's see, 19,521 in radio maintenance and repair contract. That needs to go to 25,000, just to increase the coverage, because the system is about $1.5 million worth of infrastructure. And this is like the very minimal amount of a maintenance contract, so they're looking to expand the maintenance to cover a little bit more in services. And other than that, it's down 140, yeah, I'm sorry, I stated that incorrectly. So the planning board articles are down 141,000, so instead of 165, it's being reduced by 141,000. So that will create some flexibility within this plan, which, you know,
I'm sorry, did you say it's being reduced by 140 or
Yes.
to 140?
reduced by 140.
By 140, okay. I thought
So
it was
right now
gonna
it's at
say-
165, it's going to 24.
Right. So that money can be reallocated to other projects. If there's something that has a no flagged and you want it to be a yes, we could do that. Or we could just put it into capital stabilization, and you could use it somewhere else in the future. So I will incorporate those updates and email them out to you tonight.
Now, I assume, just to interrupt at one point, because it's cogent here, the capital planning here does not incorporate any consideration of warrant articles or other mechanisms to fund some of the major capital projects we'd been in discussions about, meaning the library and council on aging.
Correct.
Facilities, so that if we're looking to have articles funding them and that has an impact on debt schedules, then the capital planning list is logically the place where that would be competing for funds on the annual budget.
The debt service,
Correct,
right.
with the debt service,
Right,
yes.
okay, so we need to have that discussion, that's the place where it needs to happen, which is okay, because this is the first time I think we've seen this list with recommendations on it, or what should or shouldn't be funded, which we've offered no input to this point.
I
It's
did
awful late
present
in the
this.
project, this is the end of February, and we were seeing a capital list for the first time with presumptions of recommendations, and we haven't been asked for any
Yeah,
recommendations.
this was provided in the last update, the last joint meeting.
2 weeks ago?
Yep, it
Yeah,
was.
okay, but not October, November, December, January, no.
And these recommendations were made by,
The finance committee asked me to take a stab at what we normally fund. And, and I made that clear, this is just, it's, feel free to say no or yes, or change things around or whatever, and just
Well,
let me
it's
know.
hard for the FinCom to do their job of making recommendations on a selectman's proposed budget unless there's a selectman's proposed budget. So I guess we probably ought to revisit that point.
a little bit backwards.
Can I ask a just mechanics type question here? In terms of funding something on the capital plan, do we have to explicitly fund an individual line item here? Or, you know, I'm looking at, we've got, for public works, we've got between a dump truck and a foreman's truck, there's $110,000. Between a couple of mowers, there's $90,000. I don't know what the priority is here. I think there's probably only one person here who actually knows what that priority is. I would rather just fund, let's say, $110,000 for operating equipment and let the people who actually know what they need decide how to use that. So can we fund
Yes.
it more under an umbrella?
Yes, the PMBC article is actually presented much like that, because they have so many projects in work. They give a general idea of, these are the things that we want to focus on this year, but sometimes they change. So the article is worded that it's $300,000 to address facility needs that were identified in the study that we did in 2014. Other departments, I think the school department actually requested a couple of years ago to have the capital article read like that, just $300,000 for the school capital requests.
No, for like big things, you know, an ambulance or a fire truck or a, you know, maybe even, you know, building type stuff, fine, you know, we should know what those look like, in my opinion. But in terms of, I don't know what pieces of equipment we need more than other pieces of equipment.
These are presented in priority order that they were given by the department. So as you go through them, you can see the police, the first one, you know, is the tires. They need that for the cruisers, and then it goes down from there. So they're in the priority order that they were submitted in. So I tried to fund them, you know, when you're trying to draft a plan in the order that they were given.
Okay.
But again, and I stated even at the last meeting, change the yes to a no. I mean, I provided the document in Excel, so you can feel free to do whatever you need to directly to the document. But you can make the warrant article as broad or as restrictive as you want.
Okay.
Sure.
just to
School
that
committee or finance committee, just jump in wherever you want.
Okay, just to your point, Chase, in the past, we did put relatively broad articles in for capital, and the town meeting got all womped up over, you know, we're just gonna, you want us to give you all this money and you're not telling us what you're gonna spend it on. So we sort of went the other way and said, okay, you know, it's listed out. And, I mean, that's, there are two ways to do it, but if you choose to go the route you're suggesting, wear your suit of armor to town meeting.
I guess what I'm suggesting is, within the things that are already identified here within the plan, you know, it's not a, what I would be proposing is not a blank check, you know, spend it on whatever shiny thing seems most compelling today, but rather, within the bounds here, as they're, you know, a mower's $25,000, okay, now we know, you know, and there's 5 or 6 items, or, you know, within the police budget, same thing, you know, there's.
Yeah, just be ready for it, that's
Yeah,
it.
just to follow up on that, most communities do it exactly the way we do it. So nobody that I know of just earmark a dollar amount and say, here you go.
The other thing it does, if I could, is it just gives you more, it tells you what the number should be, right? Because your 10,000 here, should it go over there? It's just a way to come up with a number and say, stop here. But then maybe from your standpoint, once you come up with that number, I mean, Bonnie, do they have the flexibility anyway? Do they really, the way we vote it now, it has to be
It
for
has
these
to be
items,
for
right?
that item, yeah.
See, and that, one of my complaints there is that it drives inefficiencies there, that, you know, if we give a department head a budget for $110,000 for these types of equipment, there's now an incentive to, well, I don't know, maybe I don't need the next highest trim package, maybe if I save 5 here, I can move it over there and apply it to this other thing I need, whereas if it's exclusively dedicated to, you know, a particular vehicle, a particular truck or something like that,
Right.
why wouldn't they spend every penny that's within that number? Because they can't get it back otherwise.
I'm following your train of thought, and I think that it shows empowerment, it shows trust, and what we do now is we say, okay, we've got kind of this bucket of money, and how can we maximize that? And so, if I'm one of these department heads, I'm gonna put the big tickets on there to try to get them out of this bucket, versus working cohesively and trying to work within that budget. I do see the issue that Fred's bringing up as well, and that.
No, it's a real point.
And, you know, with transparency to the taxpayers, but I think there's a happy medium somewhere in here where we say, okay, DPW, you get X, based upon what you've told us over the course of the year, we're gonna budget X for you, figure out how to spend it. Fire department, this is your X, police department, this is your X, and so forth and so on, and that still has to come back to us for approval, us being all the parties in the room, you know, as we operate in this joint fashion.
So what you're saying is give the money, like the budget first, and then they come back with the recommendations as to how they want to spend it. And that's what
That's
we
kind of
bring
a
it to.
hybrid of what you're saying, what Fred's saying. It's a proposal. I mean, that's a way that we could potentially do it, is say, hey, listen, you can plan on spending this much this year.
And let them prioritize.
Right.
Well, putting on my,
And still coming back to us and saying, this is what I came back with.
putting on my PMBC hat, when we went to Super Saturday,
Looks good on you.
thank you, we had a list of projects. And then Mike brought up the fact that we needed some attention of the lift over at Shaker Lane, which wasn't on our radar screen. I subsequently met with Steve Mark. He's identified the fact that we need $50,000 to bring that lift up, or to rebuild the lift. Now, the way PMBC does it, to Chase's point, is we list out all the projects, but we get a lump sum bucket of money, which allows us, in this case, to take new blinds, which we don't need in 2020, or new doors, and then substitute that money for the lift, which is critical, and we need that. So it gives us some flexibility.
I also don't want to incentivize department heads to just pack it full of stuff to try and gross up their number and then
Right.
spend it as they see
One
fit.
value of this process, at the very least, is it takes place in this setting in front of the camera, so that the town has at least a virtual, or if they want, a real opportunity to come in and vet it. Now, that doesn't mean that we're any better prepared to make these evaluations. So at least to the extent that the people who are making the decisions need to be better prepared to evaluate, or, prepared to succeed rather than wander in the dark, that I think is certainly an area we can improve on. But as far as the farther we get that decision-making process away from public input, I'm not so sure that's, the value gained just by, removing it out of the public budget process.
We're about 4.5 weeks from going to press. So if you want to make process changes.
I doubt that would be implemented for this cycle, I would guess.
I mean, I was looking at frankly some of the smaller things here that I thought not a wholesale change, but some of the smaller things here in my mind made more sense to address in that way. And I didn't idly choose the public works budget between trucks and mowers. That's the kind of thing that I would like to see done in this process, where I think that's very doable without necessarily biting off more than we can chew or going down a path that has unintended consequences.
Yeah, I think the public, there's a certain sector of the public, sure, that would really like to see every detail, but there's probably the majority that would just, your eyes would glaze over. So I think the manager, the Board of Selectmen, and FinCom, we're all charged with asking these tough questions that citizen would be asking at town meeting. And so by the time it gets to this, we've already vetted it. We've vetted, the budget. We've talked to the manager about, well, why is this much money for this? So I think your way works, but it does require trust in your boards. So, that's kind of the balance with it. But why are we here if we're?
But if that
This is what
vetting
we do.
if that vetting is taking place, where is that evident? I don't doubt that it has, but how does it show itself? How did these projects end up ahead of other projects? What was the
Sure,
thought
so,
process?
I mean, if you want to add to this, I think we can add a couple columns, if you will.
No, it could be.
FinCom is green, FinCom's green, they're yellow in a few, they're red. We can come up with a better way. But I do think Chase brings up a very good point with flexibility for the manager to manage a budget is so important for efficiency, I believe.
I don't mind that either, just I don't think we're structured to do that right now. I mean, as Fred points out, we're 4 weeks
we're
from the
not.
printing deadline, I don't mind an agreement on that, but we're also 2 months from the beginning of the next cycle, which means we can do anything we want to start over then, right?
That's my only point, is if you think there's really something you want to do structurally different, you have a whole new slate in 6 weeks.
A lot of moving parts.
Just relative to the capital, I just want to go back to the point, Paul, you kind of made at the beginning of the discussion, and I appreciate Chase's point that he made, and I think it has some merit for further discussion when we can determine. But, to me, the FinCom obviously needs to have input on how much capital we're going to spend in a annual budget type process. I mean, we can think about the larger capital projects are clearly a different animal. But the point you made earlier, which was, this is a list, our list was sent to the town prioritized, but it was prioritized from our point of view with no context to what's the overall budget gonna be and where does our priority fit into the context of the priorities for the other town departments. So we would like to make sure that we have one more opportunity as a working group, whether it's, we don't have to do it necessarily in a public meeting, we can certainly do it, in a different meeting or format where we're making sure that as the FinCom, Board of Selectmen, and the school committee, we've had that discussion and we're all comfortable that we've fit it into the budget, but we've prioritized it and balanced it out relative to all the competing interests that we all have. and then we get done. Like, for instance, we have a line item in there that's not currently funded, sidewalks at the high school, which are, in a very deteriorative situation. We just want to make sure that that was acknowledged, and if it's not funded in FY 2020, we know why, and when we have our own public input, we're able to answer that question. I don't feel like, and I'm not worried about it yet, but I don't think we have had that conversation yet. I want to just make sure, relative to your point, that we do before we go to press and the forum. I think we have time, and I think this is a good start, but I think we need to make sure we finish that process before we sign off anybody on what's being presented here.
Yeah, we have two more meetings before we go to press, and.
2 more FinCom meetings or 2 more joint
2 more
meetings?
FinCom meetings.
Yeah, on the 5th is the next one, right?
It's scheduled now for the 5th, I'm trying to move it to the 4th, and then the 19th. So we could either make one of those joint, or we could do as, excuse me, Mike is suggesting a smaller subset of the group to review capital, however you guys want to handle it, but we basically
We're
got 3
comfortable either
weeks.
way.
I mean, we basically
We'll make
got
ourselves
3
available
weeks
either way.
to get our
Well, if
acts
that date
together.
changes, please advise, because I think we were already looking to fill the empty free night off on the 4th with other meetings, so if you're changing your 5th meeting to the 4th, please let us know as soon as possible. Chase, you had a couple other points?
I had some questions, and actually, part of it goes specifically to the line item Mike mentioned, the sidewalks. One thing I'd like to understand in here in the capital is what components that we're not currently proposing to fund, or maybe ones that we are, can be done incrementally. That is, sidewalks are a perfect example. If we're gonna build a building, you don't build half a building, you just build the building. Is there a way to address sidewalks incrementally? That is, bite off a piece of it, and this is really a question for school and for PMBC, I would suppose. And are there other projects in here that could be taken on in an incremental fashion so that partial funding of the request gets us down the road and we're not just kicking a $650,000 problem
That
down?
definitely happens, because that's happened with multiple projects on the school side. For instance, we've replaced our heating units in the classrooms at Shaker Lane, and we phased that in over several years. When it first hit this type of document, it was a lump sum project, but then we realized that it was probably more feasible to do it on a piecemeal basis, and we worked it out between the FinCom and the PMBC to do it that way. So, rather than trying to answer a specific question about which of these projects is, I feel like that happens when we bump up against the realities of our situation relative to the limits that we have in terms of resources. We make those kinds of balanced decisions all the time.
I completely agree, and I guess that's why I'm asking that question, is what in here, certainly we've got some PMBC projects that are phase 2, part 1 of 3, part 2 of 3, part 3 of 3. Are there other things in here that can be phased that are not currently
Okay,
phased?
can I make a statement? When the sidewalks came up, I think maybe Chris can answer this. I asked Chris to give a approximate value of that, and you said that it was included in the paving and sidewalk number of, what, 640?
The 650, you think?
650?
With the granite
Yeah.
sidewalk.
The total to restore the sidewalks and parking lots is actually 1.2 million. So we've already technically phased it.
Okay.
The reality is you can phase it as many times as you want, really.
Well, there's a
My-
diminishing return, we could do
Yeah,
it one
of course.
panel at a time, but
Yeah.
that,
I mean, realistically, you could, my attitude is, you tell me how much you wanna spend and I'll push it as far as I can push it, basically. Within reason, you don't wanna spend 20 grand at a time, that's inefficient.
And in my experience, those discussions are the discussions that happen when the 3 boards get together in a working session to hack it out, because that's when we realize you're not gonna get everything you want, that happens about the first 5 minutes. And then the rest of the meeting is about, well, what can we?
Well, and to reiterate a point, and I agree with you, Mike, that kind of session needs to happen, is if we're talking about the universe of capital requests from departments, and yet that's the same place that other articles for capital projects could be funded from, and yet they're not in the discussion, you're not having the complete
I
discussion.
agree. I'd also like to admit, I think PMBC might be another body to have at that particular
Sure.
meeting, whether we do it at the FinCom meeting or.
Especially since if you follow the model that these guys are already on, which Chase is advocating, a lump sum it's only evident to a member from PBC what's in that lump sum. You know, if we started talking about knocking a chunk of that out.
Actually, all of our line items are in this
In this-
request.
okay.
I mean, otherwise, we wouldn't know what
Right, right.
lump sum to come up with. So we identify it here, but we get it as a lump sum, and then, you know, if something.
But if
with
you
the
only got a
school
percentage of that funded, what's not evident is what impact that would have.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Yeah.
And the one thing that wasn't funded was the epoxy coating in the police garage. Or that's the only thing that's not recommended right now.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
So I'm actually here as a member of the Disabilities Commission, and I had actually spoken with Kelly earlier today. So I know that you're talking about the sidewalks and doing it piecemeal. And so my concern is, on the disabilities portion of it, is looking at those sidewalks at the high school. It's a real concern of the Disabilities Commission, and we've met several times about it and talked about it. We've gone out, looked at it. And those sidewalks are deplorable. And just a point of order, we have a member on our board who has a daughter who's in a wheelchair. And a couple of weeks ago, she actually attended a program that was at the high school. And when she was going into the high school with her daughter, got stuck on the sidewalk, and the daughter almost fell out of the wheelchair. So this is a real concern. Those sidewalks need to be fixed. And to say that we can piecemeal sidewalks that are being used every day, nighttime, you know, whether it's during the week, weekends, they're being used all the time. This is a serious issue that, not just for the disabled, but for everyone. Athletes coming back at night, when they're coming off the bus, you can't see the ruts that are happening on the sidewalk. So it's a concern for everyone, and I would strongly suggest that we look at the sidewalks and do not really piecemeal them. I think it's...
I appreciate the point that Diane's making, and the only thing I would comment about that is when we talk about the sidewalks, you have to envision the whole campus. There are sidewalks that are heavily used, and there are sidewalks that are less heavily used. And I would just say that when we talk about phase-in, the goal would be to do the high priority, high traffic areas, and if we had to make a weighted decision, we'd be phasing in the less well-traveled sidewalks, which probably aren't in as bad a shape because they have less traffic. But really, it's not the traffic, it's the impact of the materials we use relative to snow removal, chemicals, and the plowing and snow blowing, et cetera, et cetera. But your point is very valid. There are specific, and that's why we would like to take another pass at this and make sure that, you know, as we get all the boards together, that if there is an opportunity to make a better decision, well, oh gee, it's 400,000 or 600,000, no way. Well, wait a minute, what if we did this and it was only 150,000? Does that fit into this profile better? And I just think we haven't quite finished that yet, and I would like to make sure that we do.
That's precisely what I'm asking. Let's pick a number, for $150,000, could we do the upper worst part of the sidewalks?
Exactly,
You know,
that's right.
that's essentially what I want.
That hasn't quite happened yet, but we're not done. I don't think anybody's admitting that we're done at all. So those are the kinds of things that.
Chris is shaking his head.
I mean, in the commentary,
You wanna do it right.
I think safety is gonna trump a lot of things in here, so we probably.
Always does.
So when we're talking about that should be highlighted right in there in the comments, that this is a safety issue, and that automatically would rise a priority.
That's one of the things that puts PMBC priorities. Safety
Right,
is
but I'm
the
just
number
saying
one.
in general. but
Well, yeah, PMBC prioritizes by ADA, life safety, building envelope. We have 7 categories, and so life safety is certainly up there.
To the extent that that can be obvious to the person walking by and picking up the list for the first time, that's probably should be our goal, is
Well,
creating
we
a
have
document
them,
that works
yeah,
that way.
we have a little code on the sheet. Yep.
But this is also listed under public works, so it's, you know, it goes back to, okay, this might be this department's priority list, right? But where does that fall in priority with other departments? So, you know,
So that's the, obviously, that's why the process is with the Board of Selectmen, the FinCom, and the school committee. That's, you know, we gotta, that's our charge is to balance that out.
Well, Mr. Chairman, at your next meeting, other than this topic, do you have many other items? Because maybe we could structure that as more of a roundtable meeting, if it's gonna be posted anyways, and try to achieve
Two
it.
topics, you have the operating budget, and we've got the capital budget. So we could just spend the 5th on capital, if you like, and have a roundtable on it. Bring in the department heads and, you know, hash it out with a goal to have an agreed-upon list.
Or the
more
4th, you say it might be on the,
action
it might be on the
items on
4th, Fred? Could be on the 4th?
I'm sorry?
Could be on the
It
4th?
could be on the 4th, yeah. Had
And
two.
I would suggest you invite PMBC.
Well, Mr. PMBC.
You're always on the list. Sorry, Chuck?
So I was gonna say exactly that, just make sure all the departments head, reach out to them, let them know that this is, I mean, the summit was an opportunity for them to kind of float it.
They report to
But
you
there
guys.
was, so, yeah, I'm not directing you to let them know, but I'm just saying, we need to make sure that the department heads, I'll point Anthony now, we need to make sure that the department heads are aware of this. This is their opportunity. Just looking down at Chris's things, he made a pretty good case for needing that wide area mower. That improves productivity. There's, I mean, one of the things that I took away from his brief presentation at our summit on a Saturday was that was a piece of equipment, it's a $65,000 mower. So if you look at it just like that, you can't. It's not, you know, like a walk behind Toro. It's something that helps his guys do their job substantially better. It saves time. It gives the department heads the opportunity to say, this is something that I absolutely need. It's a non-starter. I need to have this in my budget. And, you know, there might be some horse trading. Chris might say, I would be willing to give up X if I could get that mower. I see the mower that much of a priority. And it might be that Chris needs everything on his list, but maybe we don't need to get something else on somebody else's list. And I think, Erica, that kind of goes to your point, that we've got this bucket, and everybody's looking to take what they can out of it, and it is good that we do this dynamic, but we need to get to work. We need to have that tough conversation. We need to put Chris on the spot, and you know, each department head on the spot. You just happen to be here, so I'm picking it, or chief on, you know, one of either of the chiefs on the spot, and say, can you live without this for another year, possibly two? You know, let's get down to brass tacks and make some tough decisions. By the way, I can't be there on the 4th.
Didn't we commit the 4th to the court meeting?
I would like to.
Can we do it at 6 perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, we could do it at 6 and then.
And then you
roll
guys meet
into
at 7
FinCom.
generally anyways, right?
Yeah, normally we meet at 7, you guys can do what you want
Yeah,
before.
we'll just try to wedge in a meeting before it, that's all.
Let's do that, and
As long
then,
as you're done by 7.
then we have a defined date,
It's okay.
time.
You gonna throw us out of the room?
Yeah, right.
All right. Hey, before we break, but on the other related topics, especially since you're here before 20 and you're not going to be in the near future, good luck in
back a few
Carlisle.
times.
Yep. The issues come up in the past week that have missed our filing of Schedule A with the state. Can you update us on that?
Absolutely. So I actually had Schedule A in back in November, but I asked my Department of Revenue rep, Bobby Colburn, to hold off on processing anything because I knew I was going to need to make some entries with the refunded debt that we did last year. So now that we've finalized those entries, I was in the process of making them, but the data was in Schedule A in November, and that's an electronic process, so it was at the state's website. And then she sent out the reminder, which they sent to all the communities that haven't locked their forms in. So I called her, and she said, oh, I wasn't worried about you, but I did like the handful of entries that needed to happen. So it's been filed formally, it's all set. The data was in there from November. I did have the information in there.
Our first alert on it was last week. We got an email into the administrator's office saying you didn't file your Schedule A as was due in November, and kind of alarmed us.
I'm sure, but this is something that is not uncommon. You know, if you look to different communities, it's kind of a common practice that happens. So, like I said, I did reach out to them in November and said, I've got the data in, just don't do anything with it yet. Wait until I'm done with this refunded debt issue. And I am, so it's in. recorded.
Okay. The other topic too is on the auditor. I know that we did discuss this at one of our last joint meetings. There's been sentiment expressed that we should be going to outside eyes periodically anyways, especially now with your leaving. I think that I'd double down on that being a good idea. I also understand that Justy and Hinks are in the midst of helping you close up some ongoing activities, so I don't know if you want to speak to that. And I know board members have expressed interest in the subject too. I'll open it up to anybody to talk to.
So, I apologize, I actually watched the meeting. I totally remembered it differently. I remember a couple of comments about if, things are working well, we shouldn't change, but obviously, after watching the meeting, I was incorrect. So I apologize for that. I will take care of that with the auditor, that's on me.
In what, we say take care of it in what respect?
As far as extending the contract, it's gonna need to come back to the board for discussion. So if you guys wanna go out and solicit bids or quotes, you don't actually have to on audit services, you can kind of solicit whatever firm you want to.
I am aware from conversation with Fred that there's some rationale to keeping current folks around, even perhaps with an overlap with new people coming in. But anyway, we need to sort
Probably
those
for-
details out.
Probably for, I at least wrapping up this part of the conversion, it would be helpful because they know, this firm knows how the system has been built to this point. So it might be good to just have them kind of validate that, and then if you want to use somebody else to do the formal audit.
But in the interim, you're going to hit the reset with them,
Yeah.
tell them
Oh,
they
yeah.
need to kind of
No,
connect
no,
with us.
that's on me. That's totally on me. That's not on the
Cindy,
board.
was there anything you wanted to add in?
No, that's, thank you for bringing it up. That was gonna be my
Yeah.
question, where that stood, so.
No, that's on me.
Okay.
Thank you for
What
addressing
else?
it. Thank you for addressing it.
Oh, no problem. Like I
Anything
said,
else?
my head is a little full.
Understandable, as long as we end up in a good place.
Yep.
Board members, anything else in this? Or related
Are
topics?
we, so is the joint meeting for sure the 4th?
Yes.
It is on the 4th, okay, fine. I guess it's the 4th,
Okay, I will not be there.
okay.
I'll try to get some reporting
Sure.
back to you and
Yeah, if we're.
And we'll breeze through it.
I'll be there, it'll be.
I'm perfectly capable of being as obstinate as Chuck, it can be at times. It's a baton pass, that's all. Well, look, to the extent that this is an ongoing dialogue, honestly, you probably, opine by email sooner rather than later. We need to get everybody's input.
Absolutely, whatever.
Okay. Other FinCom members, school committee members, topics?
No, I would just add, kind of, I remember in a meeting with Anthony, talking a little bit about how these other towns have done this, Super Saturday.
Yeah.
I don't know if he shared that with you, but I think just meeting what we're talking about, rushing this through on the 4th, not rushing it through, but this late in the game, if this was something we did in October, November, and then find a way to make Saturday more fruitful, perhaps not have, the historical budget, which is whatever, $2,000, take up whatever, take up the same amount of time, when I think we could really maybe get the key departments in that room and have the discussion we're gonna have, on the 4th. We're doing it on that Super Saturday.
I agree. When we first started, it kind of migrated from November to December to January now, and I think we probably, even if everybody's not prepared, better to get people with half their stories ready and have that conversation in whatever it is, second half of October, right after the special town meeting, whatever it is, and have this kind of conversation as well as those, presentations from people, or whatever, some form of that. But getting it early in the game is much more valuable. I don't know. We're gonna have plenty of things to rethink.
For sure.
Don't expect a quiet summer, because as soon as town meeting's over, if we manage to get through it without any major problems, we got a great opportunity, which we didn't ask for, to reorganize things and rethink things, and let's treat that as the great opportunity it is for all those structural, procedural issues. And I think I speak for the board too, as we, we're going to be addressing, and actually it's on our agenda later on, appointments for accountant and then the subsequent position of Director of Finance and Budget. We're going to need to dialogue with FinCom especially, but we welcome everybody's input on that. How we formalize that or not, we haven't yet talked about. Anyway.
I'm just gonna throw something out there, just kind of just noodling this around, and I know I brought up the hybrid of Chase's idea and Fred's idea, and, if we were able to have a budget number for each department, and it's just a swag, just trying to give them something to go on, then Gary's idea can be more fruitful, and we can have better conversations, better discussions. But if that number, if we give, I'm gonna keep picking on Chris, but if we give Highway, let's say $350,000, that's what you have to spend on capital this year, and he knows that he has some stuff that's coming up next year, and he didn't spend, can we give him the authority to, okay, we're gonna roll this forward for you next year, but still, that doesn't penalize him next year, like, oh, you didn't spend enough last year, so you're not gonna get it. He's being a good steward of his money, and he's putting some money aside because he knows he's got these other things coming up, and he didn't need to spend the money right now. If we reward him by fostering that type of
You'd
environment.
have like a rolling account, right?
Exactly. I mean, kind of like we do in our households. I mean, if you can't afford to do it this year, but I'm gonna keep, putting some aside so that I can be able to take that vacation or buy that whatever.
You don't do like my house, we take the vacation first.
No comment.
I think it's helpful to just point out in the warrant, when you see each capital item, and then there's like the plain speak words of what that item is for. The motion is what the legal part is. The plain speak, that could be used, you could say 300,000 for capital for the Public Works Department. And then in the plain language, it's for replacement of 2 trucks and, planning for the sidewalks and whatever.
The
whatever
anticipated
verbiage.
uses are.
Right.
dot, dot,
But
dot.
that
Much
doesn't
like
lock them
funding
into
a building project, there's no timeline set on it, right? You put the money for the project, and whenever you end up, if you don't do it within that year, the money's still dedicated to that end, right? I mean, that's kind of a good analogy for it, right? I mean, sort of like the most recent building of the fire station. It wasn't tied to a year. It's like, here, build the fire station for these dollars, and whatever amount of time it takes to do it.
Certainly, it's a much larger scale, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, just to have something that isn't, is to say, put under the gun under the annual calendar, so that if you don't spend it, you lose it type thing.
Well, and that also incentivizes our department heads, or disincentivizes the use it or lose it mentality. Oh, I had $50,000 left over this year. Well, next year I'm gonna get 50,000 less. Better be careful.
Okay. Anyway, we've got much, we'll be seeing a lot of each other over the ensuing months, starting with next Monday. Continuing with next Monday. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, I just
Oh.
wanted to say thank you for everything over the last 13 years. I think this is like my last selectmen's meeting, and
Oh, I didn't know it was less.
That's why Chase brought cookies.
I will be
We told
attending-
him, we told him to.
I won't be attending another FinCom meeting on the 17th at least. And I'll be in and out for a few days, just to kind of wrap things up. I'm getting, everything into the state for free cash so that, that'll be ready for town meeting. But I wanted to just thank you all for
Thank you,
your
Bonnie.
support, and I appreciate it.
We wish you luck.
I feel like I'm a better person for being here, and
If I can say something, I remember way back in the town government study committee, meeting with you a long time ago, and the progress that the finance department has made during those 10 years, and your tenure here, has been tremendous. And we certainly want to thank you for that.
thank you. Appreciate it.
And,
It's a great town.
we've earned a lot of honors, and we know you've played a big part in helping us achieve them. The little things we end up arguing about,
That's a
they're
healthy.
small compared to arguments we've either had in the past or other communities have more regularly, so thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, Bonnie.
All right, now, I believe I'm turning the, oh, you are? But you're up next. You want to take a 5-minute break?
Cindy can do it.
We might have to take a longer break if I don't take a 5-minute break.
Yeah, all right. A quick break before our next presenters get their,
Actually, yeah, okay.
well, he just,
Hey, Fred,
he's just going,
I just forwarded you the citing memo. I don't know if it's up yet, but now you have it in your email.
I guess that's, yes. We are gonna.
Are you available to?
Well, here's the thing, without making a stop right in front of you, and then if you said something like, we're going to executive session, or you still-
I was just about to.
I'd love to talk.
Yeah, so we have those that we're following.
Where did she end up?
Probably around noontime.
Topic, just a little bit off schedule, but a good conversation in any event. And another meaty topic before us is the Town Building and Space Needs Analysis Working Group. Two of our board members, Cindy Napoli and Chuck DeCoste, have been hard at work with other members on this. Alan McCray, you're here. Who else is from that committee? That's anyone else present?
Mark Rambacher, but he left.
Mark
Mark
left,
left.
okay. But you've got a presentation to make for us and an introduction too as well with the architect? Is your architect here tonight?
No.
No, but you do have a presentation about the architect, or is that just in our packet?
Their presentation that they provided to the working group
Yep.
during the interview process is included
Okay,
in the packet.
I saw that here, and I thought that might be something we were putting up for the, yeah, okay. Just get so used to getting these PowerPoints up here that
Right.
thought that was coming. In any event, I'll turn it over to whichever one of you wants to take the lead on that, update us where we're at.
Cindy stepped in for me, and so she actually did the interviewing process with Alan and Mark and Kevin and Anthony.
Okay,
So,
great.
Yeah.
So,
if
Yeah.
you're,
So there was 4 applicants who had responded to our request for architect services. This is part of the Space Needs Working Group process. And so we had 4 great candidates that came before us, very different styles, experience ranges. But we really ended up unanimously liking LLB, Lerner, Lads Bartels from Pawtucket, Rhode Island, for many reasons. They have a lot of experience with the scope, a broad scope of building services. We like their style. They have a great administrative approach to tracking the project, transparency. They have an online system. They talked about different marketing, like apps and a website and things like that they can do for us, community forums. They have a lot of experience with, and we really like their style and what they presented to us, and we think they'll be a good fit with the team that we already have in place. So we are asking the board tonight for a motion to move forward with contracting with them for designer services for the space needs.
Okay. I'll tell you, I'll entertain a motion at any point, but in going through the presentation, I was delighted to see not only the quality of some of the projects they've been involved with. Maybe we should put this up on the website just to see let the town see. But some of the projects that or towns they've worked in very, very close to Littleton, so this is not a outfit that would be unaware of the type of community Littleton is.
Right.
Where is it? Here we go, Bolton and Acton, they've been involved in various, Harvard, all towns all around us. It looks like in each of those cases, renovation projects, which has, of course, part of the challenge here is the existing town building too. But,
Right.
Good. Beautiful work.
What, were they able to convey any experience working with towns to go through essentially where we are in a needs assessment? I mean, I saw some of their work, which looked really
Right.
impressive, and listen, if the thing that they haven't done is help a town go through that needs assessment, and you guys are comfortable with them?
No,
We're comfortable with them, but
right.
I'm interested to know if they.
Right, so this is basically the presentation that I shared to the board is really the Reader's Digest version of their presentation. I really would like to bring them in and meet with the board and meet with the remaining members of the Space Needs Working Group and have them give their full presentation before the board. They do have a lot of experience with that.
With that needs assessment?
They
type
do,
work? Okay,
they do.
great.
And working with a diverse group, they spoke a lot about competing interests and conflicting personalities and how to bring everybody together, and they had, certain mechanisms that they like to utilize with that. The one thing that I really did like about them is they talked about the importance of vetting community support and the ways that they do that throughout the whole process with, a website, a step-by-step phasing approach to the project. So there's transparency throughout from the beginning in the community forums. So, like I said, I think they'll be a good fit. And they do have a lot of experience exactly with what we're looking for. So,
That's great.
How soon would they be able to start working with you?
you remember what they said, Anthony?
As soon as we negotiate a contract with them, we can start immediately. So the reason why that there's not a price, the way that this went out to bid, it was, we didn't do a not to exceed, because you just don't know. So we would negotiate with them based on the scope, and how we want them to proceed. So, that's why I crafted the proposed motion like that, so we could work with the space, working group, Selectmen Napoli, Selectmen DeCoste, and determine what we want them to do first, and then we can negotiate different portions along the way, not to just leave things completely open-ended.
Okay, so when a contract is negotiated with the dollar figure, that'll come back to us.
Require another vote.
What-
No?
No. So what we would basically do, we're approving because the contracts, there's gonna be different phases that we may have them say, look at 255 Great Road and take a peek at that, and this is what we want done. Well, that might be X amount to do. If we just say to them, do everything and just kind of go at it, then we can say, okay, what's the total dollar amount for that? But if that's the option, and that might be a priority first, and we need them to look at that, then we should kind of find out how much it would be just to do that. And then we can continuously update the board on the process of what we're spending, but if we're doing it,
Well,
without
what
looking
is
at
it,
it for a
what is it capped
holistic.
by? If it's not capped by a board vote,
It's capped by what we have in our budget right now.
Which is appropriated by town meeting, right?
Correct.
Correct.
okay. All right, I think, given just the open-endedness of that, then it's probably just appropriate that we do get regular updates.
Right, oh yeah, absolutely. It's really important, I think, to do regular updates, to know exactly how we want to spend this money and what our deliverables will be.
Okay.
Do we want to have the conversation about what we
No,
should,
I
we
mean,
should charge them with
I-
as the scope?
I actually have more faith in you folks working that out, personally, I just would.
And I think that should be a dialogue with them too. I would be fearful of making a mistake by pointing them in a direction. They go, no, that's not where it's at.
I'd fall on the side of not trying to tell you what to do, but rather hear from you what you're doing. That's-
Well, we have an OPM
Yep.
who's well-versed in all this stuff, so when we start talking about putting together what we want them to do, we've got somebody beside us that, not just us laymen, that says, wait a minute, that's really, you need to do this first, so we have some help in that respect.
Right.
That's right, that's right. So a meeting is in order between the OPM,
Yeah.
the design firm, the representatives from the committee, to go over the whole scope.
Good, all right, well, this is the important technical expertise that you guys have needed in the project warrant, so, happy to see you, get off the ground meaningfully with the help you need.
Right.
One other question for you guys, and it's a pecuniary matter. I noticed that they've got a handful of subcontractors that'll be working with them. Did you guys get a chance to meet the subcontractors that they'll be utilizing at all?
We didn't, but our OPM is familiar with this firm,
Okay.
and he was familiar with some of the contractors that they utilize.
And I guess one of the things that I would ask you to emphasize to them is that if one of their subcontractors is not working out, we're just gonna ask them to replace that subcontractor. I mean, we've seen that before in a couple of projects where all of a sudden the subcontractor almost becomes the prime. And that's not really who we hired, and they're not, frankly, we had to have some of those tough conversations through the Master Plan Implementation Committee. Who we hired ended up being slightly different than who did a lot of the work, and it was like,
Yeah, I kind of wish Kevin was here tonight.
Well,
so.
it's, the stuff that they would sub out would be the HVAC, work and.
Structural engineering.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I saw here, I mean, even some of their cost estimating, which is a big part of what we're looking at here is gonna be subbed out. Some of their engineering, structural, site civil, hazardous materials.
All of them, every architectural firm that we met with,
Right.
all had subcontractors and structural, HVAC
Right.
and costing.
Okay.
They all had
They all.
a separate.
And that's
entity.
fine, I just wanna make sure they know that we're hiring them and
Right.
not their subcontractor
Right.
And the good thing
necessarily.
with this firm, Chase, is that they only do, the majority, large majority of their work is municipal work.
Okay.
So some of their subcontractors you probably saw when walking around the MMA convention. So they immediately became known to me when I saw some of the names of the place, of the different subs. Plus, there's, I know that Foxborough, he did Town Hall, he did a library for them. I'm sure I can call Bill Keegan up and we can do some, little bit of reference checks, just to do that.
I don't need to see anything. This was just a thing I've seen it come up a couple times.
What I'd be most interested in is, personally, is after you've had whatever it is, a month or two's work with them, bring them in, let them meet us, and, I'd like to face-to-face see what their, both the OPM and the architect's view of things are, see where they think we stand.
It gives you an opportunity to see the product too.
Right.
That's a good idea, because the long-range scope of this whole thing is rather large.
Right.
So the Board of Selectmen as a whole should feel comfortable with the people we're gonna be dealing with.
Yeah, and with good reason, and some of the recipients in the end are impatient. So if it's a long process, then we are all the more better served to have regular updates.
Want to read it?
Sure.
Move the Board of Selectmen award the designer services contract to Lerner Lads Bartels LLB of Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and further authorize the interim town administrator through the Town Building Space Needs Working Group to enter negotiations for said services.
Second. Motion's been made by Selectman DeCoste, seconded by Selectman Knox. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Good luck, folks. All right. Moving on, Town Administrator Search Update. We met last Friday, because we were in the process of discussing some next steps in terms of contract negotiations. We've got a couple of finalists from the candidates that were brought to us by the task group. And on Friday, in our executive session, we charged a couple of members to go out and do a little research. And I don't know, Chase or Chuck, whether you guys, is there anything more we need to cover in executive session before we talk in an open session about where we're at?
I would say based on what we were charged with doing in terms of determining what the contract terms of a potentially agreeable contract might look like, we should discuss that in executive session before we bring it out into open session, because it could legitimately compromise our ability to
And
negotiate.
what are you thinking, like a 10-minute discussion?
I would
something
say
like
10 might be optimistic, 15.
that? Okay,
something
but
like
the
that.
intention is discuss it in executive session and then come back out in the
I
open
think that
session.
makes a lot more sense, because then whatever candidate we decide to put forward, we're not broadcasting where we're willing to give and where we're not willing to give.
Okay. All right, so then I guess we would need a motion to go into executive session for purposes of discussing non-union contract negotiations with the intention of convening in open session thereafter. You can take a variation of that executive session 11. Thank you, Anthony, for jumping to that. We won't be long, I hope. We'll be right back to discuss this subject in open
So moved.
session as soon as we're updated.
Do we need to include in the motion allowing Gary to stick around?
Well, we should actually make the motion. No, we can just invite him.
Okay.
You invite him.
So move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21, subsection A, clauses 2, to convene an executive session for contract negotiations with non-union personnel and to convene an open session thereafter.
Okay, and this is a roll call vote. The motion, Cindy, you want to take track? The motion was made by Chase and seconded by Chuck, just for the
Okay,
record.
sure.
Motion's been made and seconded.
We are.
Not gonna stay,
Right,
if
and
you're
there's-
going to.
Selectman DeCoste.
I am in favor.
Selectman Knox.
Aye.
Selectman Napoli.
Aye.
Selectman Gerbig.
Aye.
Selectman Glavy, chairman votes aye as well. We're inviting Gary to stay with us and,
Do you want Ian? Is it?
no, not yet. And Anthony, if you wouldn't mind,
Sure.
all right. Take the cookies with you.
Yeah, I know, right? Those are really good.
Get your keys.
They were almost, they may have still been warm tonight. check means that we successfully checked her background.
Right.
It's pretty sharp.
Doesn't mean it
Wicked sharp.
did or didn't say anything.
Welcome back, Cotter. So we have another executive session at the end.
Yes, that's
Or
on the
other documents.
fire department, police department stuff.
How did I turn into the freaking contract?
Et cetera, et cetera.
You're good at it. You're getting good.
Am I?
Getting
I'm
experience.
not sure.
Getting experience, anyway.
This is one of the sort of things that you don't actually know if you're good at for 5 or 10 years down the
That's
road.
Quite true, yep. Okay, well, folks, as you know, we have been dealing with the recommendations from our town administrative search committee process for the better part of a month now. We had at one point offered the position, but after a period of time that wasn't working out, and the candidate subsequently withdrew. Since that time, we've been discussing some of our strategies for negotiating with the remaining candidates and where we should go forward. And I think we're in a position now for the board to take a next formal step. So I don't know which member of the board would like to speak to where we're at with our remaining candidates and what we should do.
Well,
Okay.
let me put it on the table. What we've done is, it was clear that the Board of Selectmen had 2 candidates that, of the 3 that we interviewed, that would have received votes if we had gone to a vote that wasn't unanimous, although everybody ultimately decided to cast a unanimous vote for the first candidate. What we've done is since looked at the contract that Nina Nazarian had with her current employer, and looked at our contract to determine if we thought that there was enough room there for us to establish a contract with her, should we offer her the job. Essentially, what we didn't want to have happen is offer her the job and find out that it was just a non-starter because the contract negotiations were bound to fail from the beginning. I would say at this point, the Board of Selectmen tasked me, Chuck, and Gary Wilson, who was on the TA Selection Committee, Personnel Board, and FinCom. So a lot of experience there at looking at and comparing those contracts. And I think at this point, it looks like there's probably enough daylight there that it's worth entering into offering the job to Nina Nazarian and pursuing contract negotiations with her to see if we can come to a formal agreement to bring her on as the next town administrator.
Okay.
Anything to add to that?
No, I think that's a great summary. I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Yeah, just to, reiterate a bit what Chase has said, we've, the board was just updated on the various contract scenarios, and we feel comfortable that if we make this offer, that we will end up at a place where we're in agreement, and hopefully it'll be a great success for all involved. With that, Chuck, you have a motion?
Move the Board of Selectmen offer the position of Littleton Town Administrator to Nina Nazarian, subject to successful negotiations and successful background check.
Second.
Okay, then the motion's been made by Selectman DeCoste, seconded by Selectman Napoli to offer the town administrator's position to Nina Nazarian, with the stipulations noted. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Unanimous.
Terrific. Good, and you're gonna be jumping on that, right away, all right. And Chief Pinard is aware that as soon as you've got her consensus, or consent rather than, or anybody's consent, you'd be conducting a background check, so he's at the ready.
Yep.
And, okay, good. Hopefully, who knows, by next week? Who
I would
knows?
like to rip this off, like a Band-Aid and just,
Right.
let's get it done.
All right, get it done. All right, moving ahead, Anthony, the special town meeting warrant articles.
Yeah, 1 second.
We've got,
So,
Do we skip something?
we have a list here of the special town meeting articles. They're up there on the monitors, they're in bold, that we're looking to have inserted tonight. One would be the bills of prior year, FY '19 operating budget line item transfers, the use of the Mass Dot Chapter 90 funds. Those are the supplemental funds that we received by the Baker Polito administration.
Those are the ones associated with the budget surplus this fiscal year, is that right?
Correct. And FY '19 appropriations into the Blended Community Preservation Act Fund. So that's for the special. And on the annual, we're looking to.
Well, on the special, I note one discrepancy from what we had been told. In our prior discussions with the library commissions, and I wish Mark was still here. I was under the impression that the first article at the Springtown meeting was going to be for design, and that in the fall, they would be looking for the construction money?
Correct.
And this is different from that, if I'm reading this correctly?
This is what was proposed. The finance team told the library trustees, this isn't necessarily how it's gonna roll out. If the selectmen and FinCom come up with a different plan on how to fund that, so that's why we're not inserting that right now, because it's just, I think it needs some work.
Oh, so you're suggesting here are the
1 through
articles
4.
that would be on special
bold.
town meeting, we're not inserting number 6.
You're inserting 1 through 4.
Okay,
That's
but
why I
I'm
said it
just,
bold.
whether we're inserting or not, but Article 6,
Oh,
there's still the language from that. I mean, the library commissioners themselves, as of a conversation I had about 2 to 3 weeks ago, was their expectation was it to be split in 2 acts. So you tell me the finance team told them to put it in this form?
Originally, when the finance team met with them, that's what was proposed. It was.
How recently was that? I mean, you say originally, I'm
I don't know,
just trying to square this.
month ago?
Okay, because that's right around the same time that I
5
was.
weeks ago, 6 weeks ago?
Okay.
Does that sound familiar, Alan?
All right.
My understanding, that's the way it's always,
So that's the
I
last,
had heard both versions, but my
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I had a conversation with Mark, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago, and he thought that they would be looking for design money in the spring and the construction money.
Right.
Because they're not gonna get a,
that's just for design money, so the text of number 6.
No, this is for the whole project.
Oh, no, okay, then that's, still need work, it's kind of a placeholder, and that's why you're not
Okay,
voting to
all right.
insert it, because all it is right there is just a placeholder. What, the detail of that still needs work, so that's why you're not voting to insert
Okay.
it. That's why we also, one of the motions that you have in front of you tonight is also to schedule a follow-up meeting with the Board of Library
Yes, yeah,
trustees,
yeah,
so.
we
Is
need
there
to-
any
There's a lot
chance
of-
we could pull them in next Monday while we're meeting with FinCom simultaneously, so we can all just,
they should wanna be there anyway, especially since, they're impacted by the capital discussion, warrant articles. But specifically, you might wanna let them know, as Jay
Well, that's
said.
why I think maybe having that as a BOS meeting, starting at 6 o'clock, and then a joint meeting at 7 o'clock, and then you
Yeah.
can invite in others, if we can get a couple other committees in there to
Well, I
meet
think right
with.
now, we're looking at, we should have a meeting at 6 o'clock as, with our,
Correct,
court folks, as we
yeah.
discussed it.
But in that list that it was in your package of all the committees that you have to meet, you really only have right now scheduled one more meeting on March 11th, so. unless-
Before the warrant closes.
Before the warrant
All
closes
right,
to
well-
insert articles, so if we do everything that night, it's gonna be a real long meeting.
Okay, but how many other groups have an issue that's, I mean, relevant to the town meeting warrant?
CPC, Personnel Board has something, Planning Board has an article, Water Commissioners have an article,
Well, a lot of commissioners don't answer to us.
they have an article. Neshoba Valley Technical High
And
School
that's
has
separate.
an
I mean,
article.
we can have those folks make presentations, but it's not our call. on either
Right,
of those.
presentation, yep, library trustees, Littleton Common Sewer, which was scheduled,
to the extent that Light and Water does want us to express an opinion on an article that they have, they've worked really well with us as far as the quirk is concerned, and if they, I would say the Board of Selectmen owes them that if they want to come in and they very much want us to vote on
But that
something.
meeting on the 11th can be structured to have any of those people who are presenting articles come in before us, and
We also have other agenda items. We have a public hearing scheduled, so there's just other items that are scheduled. We have Anthony's Coal Fire Pizza has a change of management that you have to approve for the liquor
well,
license.
that can wait. We always have the meeting before the warrant goes to print is usually the bulk of that's reserved for going through the warrant articles. Any outstanding ones, so I would think they take priority, they should. So if CPC wants to make a pitch, we definitely should be talking with them.
CPC I had penciled in for the 11th anyways, right now.
Right, and library trustees will see hopefully next Monday night,
If that's
and probably on the 11th
And that's gonna be
too.
enough time?
Well, I mean, we're gonna be meeting next week, we're gonna be meeting on the 11th.
Right.
And then the 17th is the print date, what is the print date?
The last day to insert articles is the 20th.
20th, okay,
So your last meeting is the 11th.
right,
And when is our print date?
the 20th, you said.
No, that's the last day to insert.
Insert
We could still take a
still meet.
motion and.
Oh, we can do that right up to town meeting, frankly,
It's in the,
wouldn't necessarily appear.
it's in your packet. Yeah, it's the last print, going to print is April 9th.
Where does space needs fall in on this? Do we have anything?
It doesn't, so that's, if you have something there, then we would need to insert. Right now, we don't have anything.
Because I think we need to have that discussion.
Yeah, there should be an article on here for doing something with money for the senior.
For the
center project.
seniors, and the other,
Whether it's designating existing funds to a designated account for them, or whatever it is,
Right.
as we discussed.
right, and so the other thing that I want to bring up too, with respect to the library project in conjunction with the space needs, and I talked to Liz about it, is looking at the site plan for the library project and the amount of parking lot that they're gonna actually take away. Their property line actually takes a considerable chunk of the parking spaces out there. That whole end of Shattuck Street's gonna become a construction site. And that is gonna impede entrance into the COA, Elder and Human Services Department. There's no handicapped accessibility from the front of this building. I talked to Liz about it, and she agreed with me. There's no way that her department's gonna be able to function if they don't have access to that entranceway. So regardless of a senior center or DCU building, we're gonna need some form of swing space for that department, because I think it's really gonna be impeded by that project, in the event that project goes forward. But it's something that we really need to start talking about and considering. Just because of the way this building is structured, it's not gonna work for that department if they can't use that entranceway.
Why couldn't they use that entranceway if the construction's further out?
I don't know if anyone from PMBC
Probably
is.
staging for the
It's,
contractors.
there's gonna be
material.
equipment out there, they're gonna rope,
But I guess what I see is there's a technical question there to be answered, and the bid would need to include some component that says, here's what needs to be maintained. And if the contractor then has to stage materials off-site, that's a cost that's gonna have to be borne in the bid. But we should be able to structure a bid in such a way that defines the conditions that make sure that what we need to be accessible out back remains accessible out
I
back.
don't know that that's possible. And I don't know it, I mean, I could be totally off base here, but there's the van coming in and out, there's seniors that a lot of them drive here and park here. I just think that we're gonna lose so much parking there, and they need that access right.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that needs to be
I think we
thought
really
about.
need to think about it. And have that discussion,
With,
so,
with getting some of the professionals on board, which we voted on earlier, that may be part of
right.
that discussion.
Mr. Mullen has something to add here.
PMBC member,
the traffic flow could be reworked around the building. I mean, the one-way could be changed in a different direction, it could be made a two-way. As part of the construction, they could widen that entrance so they could drive around to this side. In their contract, you could make it so that they have to maintain or even complete an accessible route. You know, as part of the contract, they actually might have to build one so that this building can remain operational, because you can't sort of handicap this building just because you want to.
And that project will have to go through the same permit process that, as if it were a private project too, so it's.
Yeah, it still gets reviewed by the building commissioner, so it'll all have to occur simultaneously, it would have to be in the contract, so.
And I would argue there that we might be wiser to place more of a burden on perhaps some of our staff in this building and arrange for parking, I don't know, at Badger or something like that for 20 spots, and ask staff to walk across the street to maintain the accessibility back here. But
And that's fine with staff, but I'm talking about people with mobility issues.
Oh, I agree.
Cognitive limitations. You know, I'm just talking about the people that utilize that department in general.
I completely agree. My
Yeah.
point with that was that would then free up space back here for folks who had those mobility issues.
If employees had a remote parking lot. is what it
Right,
is.
yeah.
Okay, it might be a non-issue.
You know what,
I'm
this
just
is,
I don't think it's a non-issue
more than a
at all, but I
non-issue, this
think
is an
it's a
important topic, but I think for our purposes of reviewing the warrant, what we've identified is we need to meet with the commissioners again to discuss issues relative to the specific implementation of their project, as well as the language of the article.
Right, and so back to the original statement is putting in some form of an article for,
Yep, I
A
just wrote it
senior
on my
center.
list. Yep, there should be an Article 23, some sort of senior center funding article. And it wouldn't be 23, it would be higher up in the list, but we'll deal with that later.
okay.
I didn't notice anything, oh, the other things I saw that were discussed that didn't show up in here anywhere were, what were they? An article to revamp the task committee. We were talking about doing that sooner rather than later.
Bylaws?
Yep. And then also, Chuck, you had brought it up at the Super Saturday. I don't know, it would be a warrant article or in the budget, the selectmen compensation.
Yeah, stipends for the selectmen.
You know. So those are two topics that shouldn't at least be lost in the,
I would suggest, as far as the TA selection committee one, I think you're right, we need to take it up. I would argue we probably punt it to the fall.
as long as we don't forget, this is how these
That's fine.
things
How are you
happen.
talking about the hiring bylaw?
Yeah, the
Yes.
hiring, and the only reason for that is that I just don't think we have the bandwidth at the moment to draft it, consider it, debate it, present it to the town, think through the implications, so on and so forth.
Right.
But essentially, right after town meeting, we should implement that process, and now we.
You can go in with that big tub of management-related issues
exactly.
that we're,
Yeah,
that we're dealing with.
right, because there might be other ones too that come up.
Right.
Okay.
It may be better presented as part of a package.
Yeah, right.
I agree. Okay.
However, and I'm not even sure it would be a warrant article or whether it's just a budget adjustment, Chuck. But we, you know, the stipends is something to be brought up again.
Yeah, but I think it needs to go to the voters. I mean, it's,
Yes.
you know, from the research that we've done, it's not out of the ordinary. It's,
Right.
and there's, you know,
It was just an article in the paper last week, right? That kind of rubbed our noses in it.
Yeah.
How far we are behind. Anyway. Anyone see any other topics that they expected to see in the warrant that are not on here? Or ones that are on here that they didn't think we were gonna have on here?
you mentioned the seniors, and that was the only one.
Yes.
Yeah, again, this is just a draft.
Oh, I know, but we're starting at the right
Yeah.
place.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, different from your packet, we added 24 and 25 because Steve Venuti brought it to our attention that we needed to incorporate that. So
How'd you get up to
those-
24 and 25 when we get 22
I
here?
just said, since
Behind it.
your packet, that
Okay,
was
all right.
today, so I added it into, just so
Right.
you know, that we ended up adding 24 and 25. It's one's a borrowing authorization, the other's compensating balance agreement.
The other sewer thing is there might be two sewer votes, one on the fund and the other establishing the zone.
Home
The
rule
zoning
petition.
and home rule petition.
Right.
I mean, I think as far as the two of those, we will unequivocally bring forward the home rule petition, and we're trying to sort out right now part of it is frankly the Quirk siting, right? If we
Right.
move the Quirk to other locations, it's more expensive. Now we gotta rejigger the numbers. so.
Right. Which means that we wouldn't necessarily be doing the construction borrowing yet, but the other authorizations.
But if we didn't, if for some reason we didn't bring construction money to this town meeting, we would absolutely have to bring it to next town meeting, or we would lose our MassWorks money. We've essentially got to start to use our MassWorks money by the beginning of next winter. And so we would be fine, according to our engineers and everything. What we would do is essentially use the existing design funds.
But what's reserved there is Article 20, unless I can't really read that. Probably should be two separate articles, right? One on the home rule petition and the other one on the sewer district zoning.
No, 20 is, I think is right, Chase? Home rule for special legislation to authorize this Littleton Common sponsor.
Oh, all right.
I
Again,
think
your
it is
language
just
is
one.
different than
I'm
mine.
sorry, it changes every day, so this is a new one that I just worked
I
with
was
Keith.
trying to
that-
keep up by reading the red.
I'm
That
not
one's not
sure.
even in red and it's different, but.
Yeah, I'm not sure if, I forwarded you a bunch of emails later today, so I don't know if that was
I
one of them.
haven't
that you
seen those
guys-
yet. It was
Yeah.
actually
Yeah,
working.
I think that's right. I believe that, that's right, and you also have the enterprise fund here, which we would also have to establish.
Right.
But, I mean, really, they're all one package around this.
Were there, bless you. Were there any other enterprise funds that we had discussed that we wanted to look at?
Yeah, you know, that the.
Space, or there was, we were gonna reactivate.
Something, yes.
There was another enterprise fund that we had discussed, in addition to reactivating
Yeah,
the
what
fund
was
that
it?
you.
It did come up in recent conversation. I'm trying to remember what it was. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm spacing on it as well.
All right. Diane?
Just to let you know that I was presented with a citizen's petition today, so you just want to put a placeholder for citizen's petition regarding the location of the,
Adult use,
what's that?
adult use?
No, the clerk.
Clerk.
I have not certified it, so I got it late. I got it at 4:30.
And there probably is one out there, well, we wouldn't put a notice that there'll be one about the retail marijuana there too. All right, well, what were you looking to accomplish here, Anthony, in terms of going through this list? 'Cause
Sure, so I'm looking to have two motions tonight. The first motion being to insert annual special town meetings for a special town meeting, Article 1, 2, 3, and 4, and annual town meeting 1, 2, 3, 4, 14, 15, 21, 22, 24, and 25 that you didn't get a chance to, I added just
Okay.
hours before.
And can you send out a revised list tomorrow based on,
Yeah, I'm
the
gonna send
change?
you the new drafts that we have ready to go, and
as well as a little notes on the topics we've talked about that we may want to, just so we don't lose track of them, the topics we raised tonight?
Placeholders, essentially.
Placeholders?
yeah. So we're looking for a citizen
Center.
petition, senior center.
Citizen petition 1, citizen petition 2. Just put 2 citizen petitions in there, you can fill in the blanks later.
Yeah, marijuana and quirk, right.
Right, and then,
Senior center, what else did we,
Have any of these numbers changed since you've?
just
done
I
edits?
added 24 and 25.
So like 21 is still 21?
21 is still 21.
All right.
And you'll decide on the order of the articles in
right.
another meeting.
Yeah,
so
I'm just-
right-
I just-
Yeah. These are not set in stone, but you know, Chuck, that it's,
Okay.
24 and 25 has been added. So everything will always stay unless we take something out.
24 and 25, the 2 that Steve asked you to add?
Yeah. Those are, so that wasn't included in your packet.
okay. All right, approaching it that way, folks, knowing that this is a work in progress, we have our joint meeting for next Monday, which is an opportunity to discuss some of these things probably, not in a formal structure, and then we got our meeting on the 11th, and if we aren't able to adequately address everything, they would have to add another special meeting.
18th.
Hopefully not, but we'll
Right.
see what we can do. But we need to keep track of those things that have to be addressed before the print date.
So what do we want to try to accomplish on the 4th then? Is it a no quirk, 6 to 7?
Well, at the joint
Joint
meeting,
meeting.
we'll have the library discussion in there. Just I'd let Fred know that that's something we want to talk about in the context of that joint
I
meeting.
think that has to be in that meeting, not in the 6 o'clock meeting.
Right.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they
Well,
said they
6 is
wanted
Well,
to.
6 is just, is an informational thing for the neighbors and.
But I'm gonna post it as a BOS meeting in case there's more than you two here.
I think that's fine,
Yeah.
but they,
But what happens if there isn't?
I would say that there's not an intention to,
Right. I mean, it was gonna be an informational thing anyway, so it's just,
yeah, there's no vote that needs to be taken, so post us for 7, the informational meeting will start at 6. If we happen to have a quorum of members, that's fine, it's a public meeting.
But you could take that opportunity after the 6 o'clock to, if the sighting is okay, then the board could vote on that location for the
Yeah,
quirk,
but
and
we-
therefore we
that-
given direction to Weston and Sampson, because that's holding up the opt-in, opt-out letters and everything else, so I think that really should use that.
well, we're in a
op-
position to do that if we have a posted 7 o'clock meeting anyway. Chase and I can report to the full board. If the other board members show up at the meeting, then they can sit there and listen and they'll have this access to the same information.
But that does mean that you should agenda an item for,
On
The
joint
7
meeting.
o'clock
Exciting.
meeting, right.
Yeah.
But I still would rather not do it 6, because then if one of these other 3 folks doesn't show up, we're in a worse position. We can't do anything.
No, not really.
No quorum, we can't have any.
We could still hold the meeting, we just can't vote on it. You can't hold a meeting without,
Right, yeah.
that's right. All right, so then we'll just post it for 6 to 7, and then we'll post it again for 7 o'clock, and then other agenda
Working group
item.
at 6 to 7, and the selectmen 7, and put that item on at 7.
Throw it somewhere on the, for after that.
is this competing agendas, like whoever submits their agenda for Monday night first gets the room, our meeting, and FinCom gets to join us, or FinCom's meeting?
Do
and we
it,
get to
do
join?
it, 6:55.
Well, it's only 2 items, so it can be a BOS,
Well, I mean, I think we're envisioning it being a round
kind
table.
of a joint meeting. Anyway. Any other issues that we want to try to tack on for that night?
On the 11th, you mean? No, on the
No, the
4th? No, I mean, it's gonna be a lot in there. Unless if you have any update, Anthony, we're gonna be talking about the part-time administrative help for the accountants department. We may wanna be able to act on that if you do have anything.
We have an agenda item for that, so we can talk about that.
But I'm saying, yeah, anticipating that we might authorize you to come up with something that we
Yeah.
might be able to act on next week, we might wanna be able
Want
to
to
act
maybe
on.
throw in the water commissioners, because what Nick would, I talked to Nick, it would just either be Nick or Corey that would just come and just kind
They
of.
could come on the 11th. I mean,
Okay.
I just, seeing we're not gonna be hosting the room, it's not gonna be, I don't wanna be inviting people into somebody else's
They have a
house.
meeting we can go to.
Huh?
They meet on, what is it, second Wednesday?
Who? Light and Water?
Water Commissioners?
Tuesdays, I think.
Is it-
They're Tuesdays, I believe.
I thought they were Wednesdays.
They're Tuesdays? You went to one of the meetings recently, didn't you?
All the nights run together.
Light and Water
Wednesdays,
Tuesdays?
right? It's Wednesdays.
Wednesdays?
Wednesday?
Oh, all right, you're right.
Spend most nights here.
Right.
Some other
Didn't have
building
to
in
be right.
town.
No idea.
No, I just swear the last meeting we were invited to was on a Tuesday. Maybe they had to move one, but,
Reasonably
anyway,
complicated.
they can come in the
Monday,
11th. I don't
five of
think
us
what they
sitting
wanna talk
here.
to us about is, other than getting our support, is a make or break deal. I mean, CPC, same thing, have them in on the 11th.
CPC's on the 11th.
Okay, and I don't know if was there anyone else out there that, anybody who's got a warrant article, we'll be going through the warrant, but specifically, those are ones that we, we have
Well,
an
I thought the
interest in.
purpose of the 11th, never mind. I'm off, never
Want
mind.
to add COA? to
If we have an
the-
article ready by then, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd amend the first motion up there to say is placement of articles to be determined and voted on by Board of Selectmen at a subsequent meeting.
Yeah, I'm actually already hearing from different folks who want to see different articles moved in different places. And
Yeah,
I-
we gotta try to stop people from jockeying that thing
Well, that's the
around.
second meeting anyways, the order of the articles, isn't it?
Let's know what's
Just
in
a
it.
point of
Madam
order
Clerk.
that we, so the voter participation group came to the Board of Selectmen, and you as a board agreed that we would put money articles at the beginning. So
Yeah.
as to not, and so that's part of what you agreed to before.
The
Yeah.
the budget stuff, I think, would still be at the beginning,
Yeah,
the-
and,
following that same policy. And then, there are other articles that involve money, but
Right, I mean, big money articles, I mean, it wouldn't be, but so you wouldn't be jockeying around other things just to.
Right. Okay.
I just don't want people to think that the numbers that are up there right
Yeah, those
now
don't reflect the order of the town meeting warrant, so just, okay. All right, so have you, is that
That's fine.
fine? You want to, somebody take a stab at reading those motions? Was there any further discussion before we were ready to act on the motions?
So on the
initial motions?
second part of the motion, we're going to add the Council on Aging?
Yes.
So I changed the motion,
Oh, you
working
did.
on it right here, because I put March
Okay.
4th or 11th, because some of those, I know it's just the sewer team, but, and the trustees, so instead of doing another motion, I just said either March 4th or March 11th right now.
As agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, fine, because
Is that
you're going to have a
okay?
conversation with them anyway, so they'll know which one applies to them.
They'll know which one applies to them after
Yeah.
we,
Good.
I'll send the invitations, I'll do the agenda and so forth and get that out, let them know when they're gonna appear.
Okay, so we ready?
Yep.
For motion, Mr. Chair. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to insert the following articles onto the warrants for the May 6th, 2019 annual and special town meetings, subject to approval as deformed by town council. Special town meeting, Articles 1, 2, 3, and 4, and annual town meeting, Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 14, 15, 21, 22, 24, and 25. Placement of articles to be decided at subsequent meeting.
Just put, I think you need to put Board of Selectmen on there, right?
Where?
Decided by Board of Selectmen at,
Subsequent meeting.
You decided by Board of Selectmen.
first article decided
By the Board of
by
Selectmen.
the
is-
Board of Selectmen at a subsequent meeting.
Okay.
Okay, fine. So the motion been made by Selectman Napoli, seconded by Selectman DeCoste,
As amended.
as amended. In any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Ayes have it. Second motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to invite the Community Preservation Committee, Personnel Board,
Oops, sorry.
that's right, Planning Board,
That actually
Board of
counts.
Water Commissioners, Park and Recreation Commissioners, Neshoba Valley Technical
what
High
you did away
School,
from
Library Trustees, Littleton Common Smart Sewer Team, Council on Aging to attend either the board's March 4th or March 11th, 2019 meeting to discuss their proposed town meeting articles and also to invite the Finance Committee to attend that meeting.
The only thing I'd say, do you want to put Neshoba Valley Technical High School School Committee? Or just
Well,
want
I
to-
think what we were going to do there
Representative.
is ask Charlie Ellis and then invite Superintendent Pigeon if she would like to come and explain it, and I'm guessing she'll probably just send Charlie.
Leave it open.
So okay,
That's language is fine.
all right.
Okay. So, motion's been made by Selectman Napoli, seconded by Selectman DeCoste. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
I said,
Yes, and that was the assumption.
And that'll be a good meeting for the public to attend as well.
Yeah.
Who are interested
Yeah, that
in
was our
what's
intention
going on
all
with
along,
the upcoming town
Charlie
meeting.
and Superintendent Pigeon.
Yeah, we should
I
probably
don't
promote it
know.
a little bit in
Yeah,
advance.
so we'll promote
yeah,
that.
that's right.
Okay,
That, Cindy?
Anthony, we should probably promote that meeting on the 11th. a
I'll
little bit
promote
more.
that meeting on social media, just because there's been a lot of interest from people, residents.
What meeting?
The town meeting topic's the 11th.
The 11th,
okay.
the
Yeah, all
town,
right.
just to get it out there to the public that it will be taking place. It's a good opportunity
All right, great.
for them to come and hear what's coming up.
Okay, Anthony, you have a couple of important updates for us?
Yes.
You've been doing your homework on the,
And then some. All right, so I have two things to talk about. First of all, the first item, appointment part-time administrative help. It's really busy upstairs. I've talked to the chairman, and I asked if I could present the option of hiring Keith back just to work on the town meeting warrant articles for me, which has been he's been actually helping. And I met with him, we went through a bunch of stuff. Just his formatting alone of his book would take me a while just to figure out what he did, so.
Crack the code.
Yeah, it's actually been great to have, ship him off, and he's been just inserting it, and then we'll have town council review. So it's just having that, another administrative help, especially right now. It's just, it's a lot,
I
so.
was hoping he missed us so much that he would do it gratis, but this isn't that big an
Well,
expense.
yeah, I know, it's not, I can't imagine it being, 10 hours a week, if that, and Keith was, yeah, I can't see him overpowering himself, so.
No.
If anything, he does more, so.
Right.
I think it's great.
Great, he
that
wants a
we
good
have-
reference.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so there is a proposal here, and he's already signed his version of the letter. He's raring to go.
We had him, when he said, yeah, I wanted to tie up something quick with him, just in case he had second thoughts.
All right. Board members have any issues with this?
Nope.
All right, someone want to make a motion then?
Move that the Board of Selectmen authorize the interim town administrator to hire Keith Bergman on a part-time basis to assist in preparation of town meeting.
Can we give him a title?
Assistant.
Second.
Town Administrator Emeritus. Okay, the motion was made by Selectman Napoli, seconded by, Selectman DeCoste? Okay, all those in favor, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Guys have it. Anthony?
So the Director of Finance and Budget, so we need to see which way the board wants to go, whether or not, the options being is we could just go out for a town accountant and see what that does, or we could go out for a finance director / town accountant and see what we get for resumes there. Both options, go ahead, Chuck.
No, finish the
Yeah,
thoughts.
I might jump in before you anyway, but
Okay.
but I'm sure we'll all have opinions on this.
Both options have their pros and cons as to what the board's pleasure is. It's something that I've kind of been back and forth and
Yeah.
gone to both sides on what we think that we should do, but we just need to act because we need to get some
Right.
help in there. So the finance director can only come from 3 positions here in town. It's the accountant, the treasurer, or the collector, actually, believe it or not. That's what
Right.
our, and will you kind of consider in the town administrative bylaw section search, you may want to look at Article 17 of the town code, and it might need a little reworking
Tweaking
too.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that don't even add up and crossed against each other.
Right, it gets, yeah.
Yeah, and so this is, of course, you're probably all aware, so I apologize if I'm restating the obvious. I mean, we do have a bylaw that speaks to the finance department, and as Anthony just said, any of those 3 positions, it can only be one of those 3 positions that's
Right.
named as finance director. But the fact that Bonnie is leaving and she happens to be accountant and finance director doesn't necessarily mean that whatever accountant we hire becomes the finance director. In fact, it could go to one of the others, so.
But we still have to hire an accountant.
You have to
but
find, either way, we have
not
to hire an
necessarily
accountant.
finance.
Right, and whether you consider that we properly should, it's 2 separate appointments, but it could be the same person. So I don't know, Anthony and I have talked about, I was suggesting that if we advertise, and this isn't just in conversation with Anthony, that advertise for an accountant, we make it clear in the advertisement that, per the town of Littleton's bylaw, the town accountant may well also be named as finance director, per blah, blah, blah.
Do we get candidates who could fill both if we don't advertise for both?
Well, that's the thing that I kind of tossed around, and I mentioned it to the
But then
chairman.
what are you saying to the other 2 candidates if you're just presuming they're not, in the hunt? And our charge is kind of to consider the 3 of them. That's why I was trying to juggle both, saying we're essentially advertising for an accountant, but there's the opportunity to be accountant / finance director, but it's not guaranteed.
But why couldn't we take someone like Steve and make him the finance director, because he's only gonna be here 2 more years?
We can.
In that time span, we can see how the accountant works out, or...
But how do you tell somebody that in the advertising interviews? That's what I was trying to struggle with. We're hiring an accountant, but you could well be named finance director. You'd almost have to have a conversation with somebody to explain it to them. But if you just advertise as accountant, finance director, you're just, making it automatic that whoever you're hiring as an accountant is the finance director. Because, what you're talking about as a scenario, Joe, is very plausible. And, Chuck?
I didn't read anywhere in Tom's note that we need a town accountant, we need a collector, we need a treasurer. But I didn't read it as we need to have a director of finance and budget.
Well, it's a
We have a town administrator, assistant town administrator, an accountant, a collector, and a treasurer. That position
But
could be
it's-
left
but
vacant,
it's-
and then if we determined at some point in time that one of those three who can be named Director of Finance and Budget met the criteria, or we felt as though we needed to.
I think the only question I would have on that one, Chuck, is that Article 17 states that the finance director presents the FinCom's budget. So I think at the very least right now, maybe just giving an interim finance director to Steve. Will you guys still think about that? Or just so we're still in compliance with?
I'd like to follow a little bit of what Chuck says, and just, our first obligation is to hire an accountant. Let's sort the other one out after.
That's kind of the way I come down.
My struggle, though, is that if we create a job posting for a town accountant, will that be read as someone who could fill the role of Director of Finance and Budget? If we're not saying Director of Finance and Budget, we may just get the pure numbers crunching type,
Right.
and none of the qualifications that would even warrant consideration for the Director
I
of
think we can get
Finance.
clever in wording it then. I think we probably even post both, and we don't, if we post, we don't necessarily have to hire to it.
Right, you could, that might be an option, is post both jobs.
See what we get.
Well, yeah, and why would we be presuming that the accountant has to be the finance director? Why couldn't it be one of the other two? Either the people that we have there now or in the future?
Well, I guess isn't that the first question we should answer? Though?
Right. Yeah, that's why I say,
I think-
my personal opinion, our biggest need is to hire a town accountant. If we get the right town accountant, you may well also have your candidate for long-term finance director. That's kind of how Bonnie came about.
Exactly.
But also the town government study committee made some changes there too. That's where the idea, where
Yeah.
it's a treasurer, the tax collector, or the accountant, that came
You
from
know, and
that.
that might have made
Right.
sense then, but I'm not sure going forward. Now, you're almost kind of tripping yourself up where you have only three options, you know? But it's,
Well,
it's
if
what
that's
we,
the case-
it's what we're under right now.
Did we change it? Because Bonnie was the assistant town administrator, she was the town accountant as well, all right, so she was,
Assistant town
Oh,
administrator.
she lost her
Three-time
title,
budget.
yeah, well, she
wasn't
Had that long time.
named the town accountant, was she? Or did she have
Yeah,
a slash?
she
in?
started.
First time,
started as accountant.
she was hired as
Yeah.
a town accountant.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then she went to finance and then, or keep up
Finance
there or
director, and then,
something.
but he also put on the title of assistant town
Assistant.
manager, which he stripped away without asking anybody after the other position was created, so. Well, I mean, she was in the org chart anyway.
Oh, well, yeah, because we had decided, the board had decided that that was going to be removed in order for her to, the last time she was going to Carlisle, that was one of the negotiations that transpired, which afforded the opportunity to hire an assistant.
Right.
And, she can't have two assistants, well, yeah, she can have two assistants, but it'd be kind of
So
redundant.
one of the things that I would be interested in knowing, I mean, obviously we all know Steve, but I wouldn't, with all this free time we have in our schedule, wouldn't mind talking to him as an impaneled board about taking on the interim position, essentially ask him to lay out an argument for why he should be the interim director.
Well,
of
before we
finance and
bring him in
budget.
formally in that, how about Joe and I, as
Yeah,
chair and vice chair, go sit down with him and talk to him about it?
it was.
Please.
See where he stands, see what his advice is, you know, what he wants to do, what he doesn't want to do.
Sounds good to me.
Right, maybe he says that director job.
Sitting at home saying,
And I would say that, further this conversation with Tom as well, and say, hey, peel this back a little bit for us.
Tom Harrington.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Just to help your conversation with Paul and Joe, I did talk to Steve today and just present options just to kind of see. And he'd be willing to do whatever the board needed him to do. So he would take whether it be an interim or the finance director, he's willing to.
Still a good idea.
Yeah.
We haven't had, especially with Bonnie leaving, it's a good idea to have a conversation.
I do think since we have this agenda item before us, it's worth having the conversation around getting some temporary assistance.
Yes.
For for Steve.
And Anthony, you've given some thought to that already, right?
Yeah, Steve and I had a discussion about that, and we were gonna search out who can, at least for the time being, can provide some help, some accounting help over there.
Outside folks come in.
Outside, yeah, outside.
Any idea how quick you think you might be able to turn that around?
I want to meet with Steve again later in the week, probably Thursday, and just follow up, as Bonnie's last day is tomorrow. I'm in Boston on Wednesday, so Thursday, he's gonna talk to some folks. I'm gonna do some searching as well and see what we can come up with.
Could we as a board simply give Anthony authorization, let's say, next meeting, to simply go forth and hire the best short-term person he can get his hands on, and that, I mean, not that we don't want to be involved,
I was
but
just
to
gonna ask him,
expedite the
what do
process.
you need next to make that happen? In terms of authority?
We might,
Find out, just, let's be.
Yeah,
What I
How
don't
about
want to
the-
do is make you go through a dog and pony show.
right,
That-
and then, right, like.
If you have a,
you need to
if
get
you
it
have a
done.
proposed short-term solution, again, short-term person or agency or whatever, bring us something we can vote assign next week.
Yeah.
How's that?
And
we may-
frankly, I'm comfortable with something that's pretty open-ended, that gives you the authority within pretty broad bounds.
And how about this, in terms of the posting for an accountant, let's at least wait off on language until Joe and I have had a chance to talk to Steve, and we get council's opinion too about how broad or tight we have to be on any of that.
I would add to that, if we've announced tonight that we're moving forward with negotiations on.
Oh,
on
absolutely.
Administrator, I think with this type of a hire,
If she's on board by then, absolutely. Yeah, get her input before we go
I
forward.
think it's
Yeah.
an important.
If it's gonna happen as quick as we hope, then absolutely, yeah. Thank you.
There was something else I had to that, but it's gone.
It's all right, we've had a busy night. All our brain cells are like, exploding all over the place. We've accomplished a lot, at least mine, I don't know.
I don't know.
I could be having a
It's the
stroke, I don't
cookies.
know.
Does anybody know off the top of their head if any area, I mean, we know a few town administrators around us have retired recently. Do you know if there's any finance folks, accounting folks that have recently retired, or? No?
No,
Just off my head, I didn't
No.
know if there was.
Yeah, right, that's the best case scenario, bring on somebody with the equivalent of Keith.
Did Carlisle have somebody that left to retire, or?
Went to another
Should have
job.
gone to another
Okay.
job, yeah.
Yeah. But that kind of conversation around, hey, when you're at, where are you at? You're gonna be somewhere on Wednesday, right? At the State House, wherever, start talking to some folks.
I will.
Please, yeah, okay. And whatever solution you come up with, if you have something by Monday, we'll be ready to vote aye on it.
Okay.
Cool. All right, Joe and I will schedule something hopefully this week with Steve, and try to talk to Tom tomorrow or whatever. Great, anything else under your updates, Anthony?
No, that's it.
Okay. On the minutes, before we get to the ones you've posted, you presented to us too, Cindy's done a great job, I haven't had a chance to look at them yet, of recreating minutes or typing up the minutes that you did for the
Executive.
executive
Right.
sessions during some of those interviews or interview period when Anthony was not present, which Diane wouldn't have been involved in.
Right.
But hopefully we'll have those by, well, maybe by the 11th, I suppose. We're going to
Yeah.
put it on next week.
Yep.
But we'll be all caught up. We're in good shape here, because tonight we're looking at meeting minutes from January 14th and, what was the next one?
28th
28th.
and
of,
February 5th.
And we got the 5th here, too?
14th, 28th, and 5th.
Oh, yeah, well, okay, I didn't notice, oh, the last one was that quickie meeting, yeah, okay, right, yeah, on the snow and ice budget. Diane's done a great job with these. It has been Diane, right?
No.
No?
It's,
Sorry about that. Who's doing it?
Jen Gibbons.
Oh, all right, well, you see, she's familiar with, knows what I like to see anyway.
Putting the chairman's name in there as often as possible.
It's not what I meant.
That was our instructions, we gave her that.
Thank you, Jen, wherever you are. Okay.
Sure she watched it.
Yeah, up in the air. How do you get Littleton on this thing? Did board members have a chance to review the 3 sets of minutes?
Yes.
Any recommended changes?
No, I thought they were clear, comprehensive.
Okay, then I'll entertain, I think, one motion's fine, even though not everybody was at every meeting. I don't think that really matters.
Okay. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the meeting minutes of January 14th, January 28th, and February 5th, 2019.
Second.
Okay, motion been made by Selectman Napoli, seconded by Selectman Gerbig. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Great. The last agenda topic we have for the night, it's anticipated to be a executive session. We have non-union contract strategy to discuss regarding contracts for Fire Chief Wadzinski, Deputy Chief of Police Patterson, and Deputy Chief Fire Department Clancy. And I guess the intention here is that everything we have here is to discuss executive session, and then afterward be returning to open session? Oh, no, excuse
Says
me, not to return to open session.
I think that would be right. I mean, the ideal structure tonight would be that we reach an agreement with the chief, but we still need counsel to draw it up, so we wouldn't be able to formalize it tonight, so there would be no need to come back to open session. But what we should do is probably put on, let's say, it's a 2-minute thing, as long as everybody is comfortable with it, our next meeting.
Okay.
Another 5-minute agenda item.
We keeping you up?
Yep.
To finalize what we agree upon tonight. Does that sound right, Jim?
Okay, is that, okay, are we expecting to invite the chief to join us? Are we still,
What Joe and I had mentioned to the chief is that we probably should spend no more than 5 minutes as a board briefly discussing the negotiations privately, and then ask the chief to come back in.
so it's
and
kind of
join
one of
us.
these wait in the hall things? Yeah, all right.
Well, we don't want to tell him everything we would have given him if he just, asked.
Ed, good
Bye,
night.
Ed.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
See you guys.
All right, then, with that, we entertain a motion.
Oh, wait.
What, no?
Cindy DiNapoli.
Cindy DiNapoli. Oh, is there a typo?
There is a typo.
Oh.
I might have even said it wrong.
So open up a pizza joint recently?
Yeah, well, DiNapoli Pizza.
Selectman DiNapoli, would you like to,
What happened?
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21, subsection A, Clauses 2, to convene an executive session for contract negotiations with non-union personnel and not to convene an open session thereafter.
okay, this requires a roll call vote. Selectman, and seconded by, okay, motion's been made by Selectman Napoli, seconded by Selectman DeCoste. Selectman DeCoste.
I thought it was DiNapoli and Coast.
Yes.
I'm in favor.
That's an aye. Selectman Knox.
Aye.
Selectman Gerbig.
Aye.
Selectman Napoli.
Aye.
Selectman Glavy, aye. Thank you, folks. Good night.
Good night, folks.